Chapter 2038. 2038. The terrified and despairing gods won. Earth was coming. Their fruit, their opportunity, their hope to become the eternal God Lord, was coming. Seeing the sky-blue planet, the gods revealed excited and fervent expressions. As long as they took this planet, their era in the endless star field might be coming. Whether or not they could become the sixth great God Lord force in the endless star field would depend on this one time. The leaders of the Lingxiao treasured palace, the sacred hall, the pyramid, the fire god palace, and the endless sea of stars revealed a crazed look in their eyes. Hallmaster, when the planet arrives, you go to the divine tomb. I'll take care of the rest. In the Lingxiao treasured palace, Elder Li said respectfully to the hall master of the Lingxiao treasured palace. All right, I'll leave the rest to you. Clean it up as soon as possible and then you can go to the other god tomb. The palace master nodded slowly and said, Yes, palace master. Hearing his words, Elder Li's eyes revealed a trace of fervor. Wait a moment. The other four forces also transmitted their voices. 2 god tombs and 5 forces. At the end, they would definitely start a fight or even a fight. However, for the sake of the shrines, they would fight even if they had to die. The atmosphere became solemn. Everyone was staring at the planet in front of them. What's that in the void in front of us? What's that? Could it be the boundless star field in front of us? What's that huge palace, the sea of stars, and the sea of fire? When Earth was getting closer and closer, everyone on Earth looked up at the void. When they saw the faintly enormous palace in front of them, the holy mountain that was emitting light, the sea of fire that contained endless flames, and the sea of stars, everyone's faces were filled with shock. Was this the world of the endless star field? That's the divine kingdom of the palace master of the soaring heavens treasured palace. That's the divine kingdom. Those holy mountains are the holy church, and that sea of fire and the sea of stars, those are the powers of the fire god palace and the endless sea of stars. However, at this moment, exclamations rang out one after another. The disciples who had descended with the gods immediately recognized those terrifying powers. Among them, there were even many families that were disciples of the Lingxiao treasured palace's sacred hall. When they saw the enormous Lingxiao treasured palace in the sky, some people were shocked while others were secretly delighted. However, very soon, some people couldn't laugh anymore. Is it the faction that descended here from the endless star field? What are they doing? Are they attacking us? They should be attacking us. Absolutely. How strong are they? Are they as strong as the God Lord of Light Wings? Hearing the disciples' exclamations, the others said with sparkling eyes. Hearing these words, the disciples who were secretly delighted turned stiff. According to their estimations, the skyscraping treasured palace, the sacred hall, and a few other forces combined might not even be as terrifying as that God Lord Lightwing. Some of them opened their mouths and stared ahead quietly. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, everyone saw figures rapidly flying toward the void from the direction of the Ocean Dragon Palace and the Dragon Gate Academy. There were more than 20,000 figures from the Ocean Dragon Palace and more than 500 figures from the Dragon Gate Academy. All of them were at least at the demigod level. Teacher, it's the Lingxiao treasured palace, the Holy Hall, and the others. They are the 5 powers who descended here previously. That huge divine kingdom is the divine kingdom of the Lingxiao treasured palace's hall master. They are all here. All of them are here. Ji Lingfei's face was filled with anxiety and worry. She came to Wang Xian's side and said immediately, All of them are here? They are actually waiting for us here in advance. Wang Xian's eyes sparkled as he stared at everyone in the void in front of him. At the same time, numerous gazes landed on them. There was a hint of fanaticism, disdain, and coldness in each of their gazes. Boom, boom, boom. At the same time, waves of mighty divine might covered this area. Boom, boom, boom. In the next moment, everyone on Earth was shocked to discover that in the void in front of them, within the huge palace, sacred mountain, and sea of fire, Figures were lined up neatly from the void as they charged towards them. No, they weren't charging over, they were surrounding them. The powerful aura and terrifying pressure caused everyone's expressions to change drastically. There are so many of them, and this terrifying pressure doesn't come with good intentions. What are they trying to do? On the ground, countless people cried out in alarm. One by one, figures could be seen with the naked eye as they surrounded Earth. Some rode on majestic demonic beasts, while others stepped on their weapons as they flew through the void. Looking at the hundreds of thousands of figures, everyone felt a chill in their hearts. But at this moment, the entire Earth suddenly trembled violently. In the void, invisible energy appeared around the Earth. The terrifying energy caused the entire Earth to suddenly stop in the void. Some people couldn't help but stagger as shock appeared on their faces. They forced Earth to stop. Everyone was slightly shocked. Wang Xian looked at his surroundings and his face was filled with indifference. He raised his head slightly and looked at the gods that were flying towards him. We have been waiting here for more than half a year. They are finally here. They are finally here. An extremely excited voice came from the void in front of them. An old man standing on top of a pyramid shouted excitedly. At this moment, more than 100 gods flew towards Earth. Their vast auras charged over. They were filled with fanaticism. Oh! At this moment, Elder Li, who was standing beside the palace master of the Lingshao treasured palace, swept his gaze around. His gaze locked onto Ji Lingfei, who was standing in the void, and a terrifying killing intent shot out from his eyes. Evil disciple, I will personally clean up the sect today. A cold voice came out from his mouth as he shouted at Ji Lingfei. They are just a bunch of ants from the ruins. So what if they have some strength? Today, I will clean up all of them. An elder from the Holy Church looked at Wang Xian and the rest who were floating in the sky above Earth and said indifferently. His voice was filled with disdain and contempt. Even though all the gods that they had descended upon had been killed, they still did not put the people on that planet in their eyes. This time, the 5 of them had come out in full force. With the combined strength of the 5 of them, in the entire boundless galaxy, other than the 5 god-level forces, there were not many who could contend against them. Wipe them all out. Let's enter the divine tomb. The palace master of the Lingshao treasured palace didn't even look at Wang Xian and the rest. Instead, he swept his gaze over to Earth. The divine tomb was their true goal. As for the group of people in front of them, they would kill them immediately. Kill everyone on the entire planet. Don't let any of them go. In the sea of fire, a fire giant roared coldly. Chapter 2039 2039 2039 Boundless Gods 2. Boom, boom, boom. When the flame giant's cold roar sounded from the sea of fire, a terrifying killing intent shot out from the bodies of all the experts surrounding Earth. Killing them is a piece of cake. This should be the planet that the gods and some disciples descended on. I heard that the spiritual energy has recovered and a divine kingdom has appeared. It shouldn't be too easy to destroy them. The disciples of the 5 major forces surrounding the planet had a relaxed expression on their faces. They were looking down at Earth from above. Their bodies were filled with killing intent as they scanned the planet wantonly. At the same time, they were also extremely astonished. Divine tomb? What divine tomb? Could it be the divine tomb of the eternal God Lord? When Wang Xian heard the words of the flaming giant, a hint of cold killing intent flashed across his eyes. Uncle Lin, isn't that the endless chaotic starfield in front of us? Why did a planet suddenly appear out of nowhere? This bunch of people have been waiting for more than half a year just to see this planet? At this moment, a young man was lying on a floating meteorite behind the 5 major forces. He was eating fruits while watching the show. God's tomb? At this moment, the old man seemed to have not heard him. He murmured and his eyes were shining. What God's tomb? Uncle Lin, what happened to you? The young man was slightly stunned and looked at the old man curiously. Young master, we seem to have found a shocking treasure. Uncle Lin's breathing was a little hurried. If it is really like what the palace master of Lingxiao treasured palace said, God's tomb. The God's tomb, the tomb of the eternal God Lord? No way, that planet has the tomb of the eternal God Lord. The young man reacted and widened his eyes, his face full of shock. Uncle Lin shook his head, not daring to be sure. If there really is a God's tomb here, I'll tell father, and father will tell great-grandfather that I've done a great deed. I don't have to stay in this God-forsaken place at all. And when the time comes, great-grandfather will definitely reward me with many treasures. The young man was excited, and his face was filled with excitement. If there really is a divine tomb, young master will not only do a great deed. Perhaps he'll be able to add another eternal God Master to our eternal divine leaf. Uncle Lin also said with incomparable excitement. At this moment, the young man trembled. Evil disciple, I'll clean you up first. At this moment, in the void in front of them, an incomparably cold voice sounded. Old Li's entire body was like a terrifying tornado, and the distance of more than 100,000 meters disappeared in the blink of an eye. He held a scepter in his hand and smashed it towards Ji Lingfei's head. All of you, get rid of these ants as soon as possible. Then, go to the tomb of the gods. The hall master of the sacred hall spoke to the surrounding gods and flew straight towards earth. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At the same time, the leaders of the other four forces also flew towards earth at a rapid speed. Kill! The other gods locked onto Wang Xian and the rest and roared loudly. Kill! The 500,000 disciples surrounding them also started to move and charged towards earth. Evil disciple, die! Elder Li, who was charging at the front, was only 1,000 meters away from Ji Lingfei. The wind attribute divine weapon scepter in his hand emitted a terrifying glow. Master, I'm sorry. Ji Lingfei looked at her master and sighed helplessly. Then she slowly closed her eyes. When he closed his eyes, a piercing sound was heard. Ao Crab, who was standing beside Wang Xian, raised his right arm. His entire right arm turned into a sharp black claw. The huge claw extended for 1,000 meters and directly penetrated Elder Li's body. What? At this moment, Elder Li, who was overwhelmed by intense pain, was filled with shock and horror on his face, which was filled with killing intent. At this moment, he felt the sharp claws that had pierced through him slowly grow bigger and completely wrap around him. How is this possible? He couldn't help but let out a low growl. His eyes instantly turned blood red as he stared at his body that had been pierced through. He was shocked. He was a god that had ignited 8 wisps of divine fire, yet his body had been pierced through in an instant. Even though he had been very careless just now, being able to penetrate his body in an instant still caused his face to be filled with shock. No, no, no. The threat of death enveloped his body as he shouted out in terror. At this moment, all the gods rushing over were completely stunned. They looked at Elder Li, whose body had been penetrated, with a face full of astonishment. Elder Li was an elder of the Lingxiao Treasure Hall, and he was also the deputy hall master of the Lingxiao Treasure Hall. His strength was second only to their hall master and the hall master of the Holy Church. However, in the instant just now, his body had been penetrated. Upon hearing his horrifying screams, the pupils of the gods contracted slightly. Everyone, don't be in such a hurry to enter Earth. At this moment, Wang Xian looked at the 5 leaders who were flying toward Earth and said faintly. His face was filled with smiles. Just like the expressions of the group of gods just now, his face and eyes were filled with disdain and contempt at this moment. Hall Master, please save me. A terrified begging voice sounded. Without needing Wang Xian to say anything, the Hall Master of the Lingxiao Treasure Hall, the Hall Master of the Saint Hall, and the others also stiffened. They looked in Elder Li's direction with an embarrassed expression. Digi, a god with 8 wisps of divine fire wants to kill us in front of us? And the gods of the boundless galaxy, is Earth something you can do as you please? The sharp thorn in Ao Crab's hand slowly grew longer, completely enveloping Elderly. He wanted to escape with a face full of fear, but to his horror, he realized that he couldn't break free from Ao Crab's sharp claws at all. The current Ao Crab could fight against a level 1 Eternal God Lord with his full power. He could easily kill a god with 8 wisps of divine fire. His strength. Seeing that Elderly could not break free even with all his might, the temple master of the Lingxiao treasured palace had a grave expression. Beside him, the expressions of the leaders of the Sacred Hall's Fire God Palace changed slightly, and they stopped in the air. How is this possible? How can a small, ruined earth have such an expert? The surrounding gods from the 5 great factions widened their eyes as they looked at this scene in disbelief. This was merely a planet that had been recovering its spiritual energy for more than 10 years. To be able to produce a god that was comparable to 6 or 7 wisps of divine fire was already heaven-defying. However, the person who had attacked had actually killed Elderly, who had 8 wisps of divine fire, in an instant. Everyone took a deep breath, and a grave expression appeared on their faces. Ah! At this moment, an extremely tragic and desperate cry rang out. Everyone from the 5 major factions immediately looked over. With a clench of his sharp claws, Elderly, who had 8 wisps of divine fire, was completely dead. An expert who belonged to a faction in the boundless galaxy had died just like that. Everyone's expression changed drastically, and the atmosphere instantly became strange. Wang Xian swept his gaze across all of them, and the corner of his lips curled up slightly. Chapter 2040. 2040 Infinite Gods 3 in Terror and Despair. But in the chaotic starfield, the wailing of heaven and earth could be heard. The austere atmosphere slowly became a little strange. The leaders of the 5 forces on the right stared at Wang Xian and the rest with an awkward expression. Elderly's death was clearly beyond everyone's expectations. In their opinion, even if this planet that flew over from the ruins had killed the gods that they had descended upon, its strength was at most 6 to 7 wisps of divine fire. From their point of view, this was already at the peak. However, now, a peak expert with 8 wisps of divine fire had been killed. This was something that they had never expected. It's not a one-sided killing. This is interesting. At the position behind them, the youth and Uncle Lin were hiding under a meteorite. When they saw a god with 8 wisps of divine fire die, they were slightly shocked. We really didn't expect this. No wonder the gods who descended from our Lingxiao treasured palace died in your hands. On the right of the center of the battlefield, the Lingxiao treasured palace master who was about to directly enter Earth gripped the warhammer in his hand tightly and growled in a cold voice. Buzz! As he spoke, the warhammer in his hand rotated, and a terrifying air wave spread out in all directions. Kill them first, then we'll go to the graveyard of the gods. He looked at the leaders around him and said indifferently, All right. The hall master of the Sacred Hall and the other 3 leaders nodded. Their gazes locked onto Ao Crab, and their eyes were filled with dense killing intent. Although the strength of the other party had completely exceeded their expectations, they were not too afraid. They really didn't believe that their side's hundreds of gods and leaders weren't a match for the other party. I want to see just how much strength they have. The hall master of the Sacred Hall revealed a cold expression as he exchanged a glance with the hall master of the Lingxiao treasured palace. Wang. The hall master of the Lingxiao treasured palace slowly raised the warhammer in his hand and coldly spat, Kill him. Okay, let's end this quickly. The temple master of the Sacred Hall smiled and nodded lightly. As a powerful force that had stood in the boundless star field for hundreds of thousands of years, as the leader, they had already ignited 9 wisps of divine fire. With the entire force as their foundation, they controlled many resources and had powerful divine weapons in their hands. Even the middle-aged man who had instantly killed Elderly had ignited 9 wisps of divine fire. They were not afraid. Holy light, judgment. The hall master of the Sacred Hall raised the holy scepter in his hand. In an instant, streams of holy light seemed to streak across the sky behind him. Each stream of holy light was more than 10 meters thick and a few hundred kilometers long. They crisscrossed and covered Wang Xian and the rest. Void hammer, tremor. The hall master of the Ling Shao treasured palace raised the war hammer in his hand and dropped it into the void. Bang, bang, bang. The entire void seemed to have exploded. Countless cyan-colored tremors in the void swept towards Wang Xian and the rest. The attacks of the two of them enveloped all of them together. Dragon King, leave the 5 of them to me. He saw their attacks and a terrifying fighting spirit erupted from his body. He moved his body and transformed into a devouring dragon that was 20,000 meters in size. Roar. A roar sounded from the side. He waved his tail and an earthen yellow energy swept forward. Boom. The earthen yellow energy swept past and the holy light and vibrations were all devoured by the earthen yellow energy. None of you can leave today. He roared and moved, instantly appearing in front of the palace lords. His dragon claw clawed at him. You're courting death. Seeing that his attack was blocked, the palace lord raised the warhammer in his hand. Waves of green energy gathered on the warhammer and met Crab's dragon claw without any fear. Boom! A huge explosion sounded, and the impact of the warhammer covered an area of 100 kilometers. Bang! However, the moment the hammer collided with Crab's dragon claw, the temple master's expression changed drastically. A terrifying power sent him flying backward. A large amount of blood oozed out from his arm. What? The temple master's expression changed drastically, and fear appeared on his face. Such powerful strength. The temple master's expression changed slightly when he saw this. He tapped the holy scepter in his hand lightly, and a majestic power of light entered his body, healing his injuries. Boom, boom, boom. Following that, the hall master of the sacred hall released a light shadow, a light wing, and a light armor. Rays of light fell on the body of the hall master of the Lingshao treasure hall, condensing into light wings and light armor on his body. This guy is very strong. Let's attack together. The expression of the hall master of the Lingshao treasure hall changed slightly as he shouted at the other leaders. Attack! A fire giant, an old man covered in white cloth, and a middle-aged man with huge waves behind him. The 3 of them had solemn expressions. An expert who could send Zhan Lingtian flying with a single strike was definitely stronger than them. Lingshao Divine Kingdom, Lingshao Palace. The Lingshao Hall Master was clad in light armor and had light wings on his back. He stared coldly at Crab and roared once again. Buzz! 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 The huge Divine Kingdom within a radius of dozens of kilometers emitted a green light. Beams of wind attribute imperial palaces flew towards him and slowly rotated around him. Shatter! He roared and the warhammer in his hand smashed towards the imperial palaces. Boom! The warhammer landed on the imperial palaces and the imperial palaces smashed towards Crab. The terrifying throne was like a meteorite. Go! Boom boom boom. A flaming meteorite condensed from flames, a white void cloth, and a giant void beast condensed from water elements all attacked Crab. With just you guys. Crab saw their attacks, and a look of contempt appeared in his eyes. He spread his enormous wings and flapped them quickly. Boom, boom, boom. Streams of black soil instantly covered all their attacks. The black soil was like a swamp, melting and devouring streams of energy attacks. This is bad. The faces of the temple master of the Lingshao treasured palace and the hall master of the Saint Hall changed slightly when they saw that their attacks were easily blocked again. Kill them all. Leave no one alive. At this moment, Wang Xian glanced at Crab and the others from the front. He stared at the surroundings and gave a stern order. Yes, leave no one alive. Anyone who dares to invade us, kill them all. The group of Dragon Palace leaders revealed a violent killing intent. Kill. Ao Chitian raised the ocean-pacifying divine needle in his hand and charged straight at the gods in front. The rest of the godly state Dragon Palace members followed closely behind. The violent and terrifying pressure charged at the gods in front. Kill! The 20,000 members of the Dragon Palace also started to move. They stared at the 500,000 demigod-level experts around them as they charged forward. Chapter 2041. 2041 The terrified and despairing infinite gods 4. Kill, kill, kill them. More than 20,000 people dare to fight against us, crush them. We have more than 100 gods, kill them. When the gods and 500,000 disciples of the 5 major forces saw that the people on this planet dared to attack them, cold, killing intent appeared on their faces. They roared and immediately went to welcome them. Each of the 100 gods had been through hundreds of battles and had 500,000 disciples. None of them were lower than demigods, so how could they be afraid of the 20,000 plus experts in front of them? Whoosh, 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 boom, boom, boom. Ring, ring, ring. However, when Ao Chitian and the other sticks, arrows, lightning, and that sudden clear sound rang out, they were stunned. 97, 98, 99, damn it. Among them, there are no less than 100 gods who have ignited the divine fire. Be careful. Be careful of the demon monkey at the front with the stick in his hand. His strength is very terrifying. Be careful of the arrows and that special sound. Seal your hearing. Be careful. At the front, a god with 7 wisps of divine fire saw the people from the Dragon Palace rushing over. He sensed the terrifying auras of the people, and his expression changed slightly. The gods from the 5 major factions were completely dumbfounded when they sensed that there were no less than 100 experts. Especially when they sensed Ao Chitian's aura, they felt that this devil monkey's strength was no weaker than the leader of the Fire God Palace, the Pyramid, and the boundless sea of stars. Loud reminders rang out, and the stronger gods from the 5 major factions immediately released their powerful defenses. Boom, boom, boom. In the void, terrifying energy collided with each other and exploded in all sorts of ways. Waves of terrifying airwaves rushed out in all directions. Hiss. On Earth, everyone's faces were filled with shock when they saw this scene. After the shock, many people revealed gloating expressions. This group of large factions from the boundless star field are completely dumbfounded. They probably didn't expect the Dragon Palace to be so powerful. The number of gods in the Dragon Palace has reached more than 100. It's really terrifying. Now that those guys aren't arrogant anymore, they still want to kill us all. Now let's see what they can do. The Dragon King and the others can even kill the Eternal God Lord, let alone you guys. You damn guys die. Everyone on Earth had excited expressions on their faces as they cursed. These guys still wanted to kill them, but it was still uncertain who would kill who. Not good, that devil monkey is in existence with 8 wisps of divine fire. Deputy Hall Master, you will block him. At this moment, in the air, a sea-pacifying needle that was dozens of kilometers long broke through the defenses of the 5 major forces. A god from the Holy Church shouted in fear. Leave it to me. At the Holy Church, a middle-aged man held the Sword of Light and went up to Ao Chitian directly. Thank you for the gifts. Wang Xian's eyes sparkled as he stared at the gods in front of him. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly. There was only one person who had 8 wisps of divine fire and more than 10 people who had 7 wisps of divine fire. The overall strength was not something that the Dragon Palace could withstand. However, this was under the situation where he and Xiaolan did not make a move. 5 elements millstone. Yin and Yang poles. Wang Xian collapsed into the void in front of him and shouted softly. Boop. He slowly raised his arm and the 5 elements millstone appeared in the sky. In the past 2 years, all the divine weapons with 7 attributes that Wang Xian had obtained were all devoured by the 5 elements millstone. Even the divine weapons that he obtained in the Eternal Divine Kingdom were all devoured by the millstone. Now, the power of the five elements millstone was comparable to his increased strength. The five elements millstone within a radius of 300 to 400 kilometers floated in the air, emitting vast power. Above them, the five divine dragons pulled the incomparably huge millstone and crushed it forward. Damn it, how can this planet that rushed out from the ruins have so many terrifying experts? When they saw the five elements millstone that contained boundless power charging towards them, the expressions of everyone from the five great factions became ugly. Go, we'll block it. The group of gods with seven divine flames looked at each other, then gritted their teeth and attacked the five elements millstone. 1. The five elements millstone shook slightly, and the river of destruction swept towards them. Oh no, block it. Use the divine kingdom to block it. When they saw the river of destruction, more than 10 gods with 7 wisps of divine fire let out a loud roar. Boom, boom, boom. One after another, divine kingdoms appeared behind him. The majestic energy within the divine kingdoms was fighting against the river of destruction. Yin and Yang extremes, crush. Wang Xian's right leg collapsed forward as the Yin and Yang extremes attacked the gods with 7 wisps of divine fire. The Yin and Yang poles, which were about 100 kilometers in circumference, were exceptionally eye-catching in the void. As the two poles rotated, the power of light and darkness turned into a chainsaw. Oh no, I can't hold on any longer. A god with the 7 wisps of divine fire shouted with a face full of fear. He quickly retreated backward. One of them retreated while the rest of them had a drastic change in expression. Damn it. A few of them could not dodge in time. Their faces were filled with fear. Boom, boom, boom. Huge fireworks rose in the void. Numerous divine kingdoms were directly destroyed. Ah! Screams of despair were heard along with the wailing of the heaven and earth. 3 gods with 7 wisps of divine fire were killed instantly. With more than 10 gods with 7 wisps of divine fire, it was completely impossible for them to fight against Wang Xian. 5 elements millstone, 10,000 dragons roar. Wang Xian let out a low growl. 7 colored rays of light fell from his body onto the 5 elements millstone. At this moment, divine dragons emerged from the 5 elements millstone and started to wreak havoc in the surroundings. Boom, boom, boom. Oh no, run, run. At this moment, it was not only the few gods with 7-colored divine flames. The dozens of gods in the surroundings were also shocked. They immediately hid in the surroundings. Ah! There's an assassin. Be careful, be careful. Suddenly, screams of pain rang out from the surroundings. Ao Yao and the others, who were hidden in the void, launched a fatal attack. Ao Yao led 2 thorn dragon species and instantly assassinated 3 gods with 3 wisps of divine fire. A dark haze instantly enveloped the heads of the 5 major factions' hundreds of gods. The enemy's strength had completely exceeded their expectations. Too strong. Run, run, run. They are all peak-stage demigod existences. Let's run. Lord gods, save us. However, at this moment, screams suddenly sounded from the side. Some of the gods looked around and were completely stunned. Their 500,000-strong army was being slaughtered by 20,000 soldiers. The two were on completely different levels. 500,000 against 20,000, they had no ability to resist. Chapter 2042. 2042, The Terrified and Despairing Boundless Gods 5. How could this be? These are the most elite disciples of our 5 great factions. All of them are above the demigod level, and there are a total of 500,000 of them. The gods of the 5 great factions swept their gazes over, revealing extremely embarrassed expressions. They were the most powerful factions in the boundless star field. The skyscraping treasured palace and the holy church were also considered very powerful factions in this star field. Their disciples were definitely elites. But now, they were being slaughtered quickly without the ability to resist at all. The strength of the members of the Dragon King's Dragon Palace is so terrifying. Every one of them is at least at the peak of the demigod realm. Those 500,000 people just surrounded our Earth, and now, too powerful. It's a pity that the Dragon Palace doesn't accept disciples, or else I would definitely join the Dragon Palace. On Earth, everyone looked around with envy and admiration on their faces. They had felt the overwhelming pressure and arrogance of the 500,000 people just now. They had said that they could easily slaughter them, but now, a member of the Dragon Palace could fight against hundreds of disciples of the five forces and kill them quickly. There were only a few thousand people who could fight against the disciples of the Dragon Palace. Moreover, they were killed quickly by the strange demon. The arrows were laced with a terrifying poison. Once they touched a demigod disciple, he would die instantly. Poison, a terrifying poison, was a great killing weapon. Apart from the poison, a strange voice entered their minds. Within this sound, the demigod rank 1 and rank 2 disciples didn't even have the strength to resist. They were crushed, completely crushed. The 500,000 disciples were defeated in a short instant. In less than 5 minutes, at least 200,000 disciples died. Corpses floated in the air. Those disciples who were still alive saw this scene and completely collapsed, losing all will to fight. This was not a battle, this was suicide. Fear and despair enveloped everyone's hearts. Some of the disciples could not help but ask the gods for help. Kiki, there's no need to ask for help. Your gods will live and die with you. Eight-limbed demon Shah and the others swept a glance and revealed a sinister and mocking expression. They had come here to kill them. If they wanted to destroy the entire Earth, they would have to pay the price. Sister, let's go get some good stuff. That god with 2 wisps of divine fire has a wood attribute divine weapon. At the back, the group of girls had yet to make a move. Huara's eyes were bright as she stared at a god as she spoke to her sister. All right. Kair nodded. The two of them patted the golden lion divine beast beneath them. Roar, roar. The 2 golden lions roared and entered the battlefield. So. The stellar grass above the 2 girls' heads flickered and disappeared in an instant. Soon, a miserable cry came from the front, and the 2 girls smiled. Over the past year, their strength had only increased by 1 level, but their stellar grass could now kill a god with 4 wisps of divine fire. 2 star grass attacking a god with 2 wisps of divine fire was a piece of cake. Hehe, you 8 wisps of divine fire dare to fight against me? At this moment, a violent aura filled an area of several hundred kilometers. In the nearby void, Ao Crab's dragon tail had completely entangled the 3 divine shadows. The 3 divine shadows were the leader of the pyramid, the leader of the fire god palace, and the leader of the boundless sea of stars. At this moment, the 3 of them were filled with despair as they stared at Ao Crab in shock. No, don't kill me. I'm willing to submit. The 5,000-meter-long fire giant roared in terror. You are not qualified. Ao Crab roared out with killing intent. He swept his draconic tail and swept forward. Boom, boom, boom. 3 terrifying sounds of collision rang out as the 3 fell into their god countries. The entire god country shook. How is this possible? How can his strength be so terrifying? He's completely toying with us. On the side, the temple masters of the skyscraping treasured palace and the sacred hall had cold sweat on their foreheads. Their bodies were covered in blood, and one of the sacred hall master's eyes was completely blind. And there wasn't a single mark on Ao Crab's body. This made the 2 of them feel helpless. No matter what kind of attack it was, the other party could easily block it. The other party's attack was able to severely injure them in an instant. From the start of the battle, this monster was completely toying with them. This was not a battle of the same level. In fact, they even felt that peak deity realm experts should not be this terrifying. We are not a match for them. The hall master of the sacred hall roared in a low voice with some fear on his face. Go leave this place. Tell this news to an eternal God Master and have him kill all of them. Kill all of them. The palace master of the Lingshao treasured palace had a ferocious expression on his face. They had never expected that the other party's strength would be so terrifying. The two of them scanned their surroundings and looked at the rapidly dying gods. They clenched their fists tightly. Right now, they only had one way. They had to tell the eternal God Lord about this planet. They might receive the eternal God Lord's protection. And this planet would be completely wiped out by the eternal God Lord. Run. The two looked at each other, gritted their teeth, and made up their minds. One. They waved their arms, and the wings of light and the wings of wind attached themselves to each other. Then they turned around and flew in the direction of the boundless galaxy. You want to run? It's too late. Seeing that they wanted to run, Ao Crab flapped his two ferocious dragon wings, and a huge black wall stood in the void. The throne of the Fire God Palace, the pyramid, and the leader of the boundless starry sea are dead. The Hall Master and the Hall Master are trying to escape. It's over, it's over. No, it's impossible. How could our Hall Master? When the gods saw the fall of their leader and wanted to escape, their faces were filled with panic. Even their leader had escaped. What else could they do to resist? Leave no one alive. Wang Xian shouted coldly when he saw the gods from the 5 major forces who were defeated. Kill, leave no one alive. If you want to kill us, all of you can stay. The gods from the Dragon Palace unleashed their full strength and attacked the gods who had lost their will to fight. Run. At this moment, the gods had no desire to fight. All they wanted was to escape quickly. However, it was obviously impossible to escape from the killing of the members of the Dragon Palace. In order to prevent any accidents, Wang Xian did not allow them to escape. Since they were here, none of them could escape. Chapter 2043. 2043, the Eternal God Lord has arrived. All of you will submit. Bang, bang, bang. Boom, boom, boom. The sky in this chaotic region was abnormally bright. The god nation exploded, burning with enormous flames. The sea of stars stopped flowing, giving off a huge rumble. Accompanied by miserable cries and the sorrowful cries of heaven and earth, the entire region was thrown into chaos. Energy tides formed in the void, and corpses flowed in the vacuum. The battle between more than 200 gods, even if it was in the boundless galaxy, would be a world-class battle. Only when there was a fight for the ultimate treasure of heaven and earth would such a large-scale battle break out. Ao Crab easily blocked the Hall Master of the Lingshao Treasured Palace and the Hall Master of the Saint Hall. Wang Xian used the yin and yang poles to draw a line of death for the gods of the 5 major forces. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, 2 extremely intense cries of pain rang out, causing the gods to tremble slightly. They looked to the side. When they saw the warhammer of the Hall Master of the Lingshao Treasured Palace floating in the air and saw the sharp claws tearing apart the Hall Master of the Holy Hall, everyone was shocked. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The more powerful the god, the more intense the cries of pain were. The Temple Master of the Lingshao Treasured Palace has fallen. The Temple Master of the Sacred Hall has fallen. At this moment, the remaining gods of the 5 major forces were shocked. Their faces were ashen. All their leaders had fallen. They had been organizing here for half a year. They were fervently waiting for the arrival of this planet. Many gods dreamed that they could obtain the inheritance of the God Tomb and become the eternal God Master. However, what they were waiting for now was not an endless opportunity, but a huge disaster. It was so laughable to think that they had been planning to destroy these people on this planet for half a year. Fear and despair had completely enveloped them. As for the 500,000 disciples, many of them had already given up on resisting. How could they resist? The Dragon King is so powerful. We haven't seen him make a move yet. The strength of the Dragon Palace is probably only stronger than that of the massive Dark God. The Dragon King is mighty and killed well. They still want to kill us, HME. In the future, our Earth will have the protection of the Dragon Palace. What else is there to be afraid of? Contrary to everyone from the 5 forces, the Earth members revealed excited expressions on their faces. All of them looked up at the void in awe, at the Dragon King and the members of the Dragon Palace. The terrifying battle had gradually come to an end, and now it was time to end it. There were over 100 gods, and at this moment, more than 20 of them were desperately trying to escape. As for the 500,000 disciples, they had completely lost their ability to resist, and now there were only 20,000 to 30,000 scattered. Among them, there were even some who were kneeling in the air, begging for mercy. This planet that flew over from the chaotic starfield is so powerful. There are actually over 100 gods. Moreover, that terrifying monster should have reached the peak of the god realm, right? At this moment, the young man who had been hiding at the back watched this scene with a face full of surprise. It's really exciting. This is the first time I've seen such an intense battle. He murmured as he looked at one of them. Why do I feel a sense of familiarity with those 2 girls riding on the golden lion? And the spiritual herb on top of their heads? It's somewhat familiar. All right, Uncle Lin, take a look. Don't those 2 girls feel very familiar? As he spoke, he looked at Uncle Lin at the side. Uncle Lin? What are you doing? At this moment, the middle-aged man standing beside him stretched out his 5 fingers, and the branches extended towards the battlefield. Wait, young master. Uncle Lin's forehead was full of sweat as he spoke to the youth. It was clear that his current actions had expended a lot of energy. Uncle Lin's strength was not very strong. He had only ignited 6 wisps of divine fire, so he still had to be careful when facing the gods on the planet in front of him. In the chaotic battlefield, a drop of divine blood was slowly wrapped up by a branch and disappeared without anyone noticing. Success! When Uncle Lin saw that the divine blood was caught, his face revealed an excited expression. Wang! He opened his palm and stared at the divine blood, his eyes shining. Uncle Lin, what are you doing? The youth stared at Uncle Lin, his eyes shining. This is a god of 5 wisps of divine fire from one of those forces. He wants to escape with a drop of divine blood, so I'll lure him over. Uncle Lin revealed a smile as he took out a drop of resplendent liquid from his interspatial ring. The drop of liquid dripped onto the drop of divine blood, causing it to tremble slightly. A palm-sized human figure slowly appeared. For you, what are you doing? The shadow appeared with a frightened look on his face. His eyes sparkled as he asked. Buzz. Uncle Lin took out a shiny leaf. Tell me what's going on here. If you've done something good, I'll give you a lot of rewards. Eternal Divine Leaf. When the shadow saw the leaf, his body trembled. The Eternal Divine Leaf was an existence that shook the entire galaxy. Tell me, Uncle Lin said to him. Tell me, what's the situation on that planet? How can you guys be so stupid? You've been planning for more than half a year, and you're all destroyed. The young man couldn't help but ask. Yes, it's my lord. The shadow slowly calmed down, his eyes burning. If he could get the Eternal Divine Leaf on the list, it might be a blessing in disguise for him. That planet was more than 10 years ago. The shadow said slowly. The god's tomb is really the god's tomb. Is there really a god's tomb on that planet? Or are there 2? When they mentioned the god's tomb, Uncle Lin and the young man were extremely excited. Yes, sir. We are 100% sure that there are 2 divine tombs on that planet. Otherwise, the 5 great forces wouldn't have waited here for half a year. The Phantom said with certainty. 2 divine tombs. There really are 2 divine tombs. The young man's body was trembling. Uncle Lin's eyes were also burning. The value of 2 divine tombs could cause a fight between the 5 great god lords in the endless star field. It's true. The Phantom nodded its head with certainty. Young Master, contact Master and the others immediately. Contact the Lord God Lord. Uncle Lin said to the young man with an excited face. I know. The young man was also excited. He immediately took out his communication device. The communication stone plate flickered slightly, and a dignified phantom appeared in front of them. "What do you want from me?" The imposing middle-aged man saw that the young man was clearly somewhat impatient, and he sternly shouted, "Father, I have a shocking piece of big news here." The young man's face revealed an excited expression as he said, "Oh." The middle-aged man's gaze was imposing as he stared at him, listening at the side. Chapter 2044. 2044. The eternal God of 2044 had arrived, and all of you were submitting to him. Is there really a divine tomb? Behind a meteorite in the chaotic area, the shadow in front of the young man heard his son's report and revealed an excited expression. "Master, we should be able to confirm it." Uncle Lin respectfully nodded to the majestic shadow. Good boy. If there really is a divine tomb there, your merit is immeasurable." The imposing figure revealed an excited smile. His gaze swept over Uncle Lin, and his eyes shot out a fiery expression. "Old Lin, you guys wait here. You must ensure your safety." As he spoke, he looked at the young man again. "I will immediately report to your great-grandfather. I will rush over to your place very soon." "It's the old master." "It's father. All of this is my credit." The young man's face revealed an excited expression. "Don't worry, when the time comes, your great-grandfather will reward you." As the majestic figure finished speaking, his figure directly disappeared. "Young master will wait here." Uncle Lin's gaze looked towards the direction of Earth as he said softly to the young man, Good. The young man's face was filled with excitement as he stood at the side and waited quietly. In the middle of the battlefield, when the last scream disappeared, the entire void was filled with corpses and divine kingdoms. There were more than 100 divine kingdoms, and every one of them was exuding a majestic aura. Dragon King, 3 of the members who ignited the divine flame have perished. More than 50 ordinary disciples of the Dragon Palace have perished. In the middle of the sky above Earth, Prime Minister Gui came forward to report to Wang Xian. In a war, there would definitely be deaths. This war was a complete victory for the Dragon Palace. The deaths of 2 godly state experts and more than 50 disciples were only a small number. Compared to the gains, this small loss was not worth mentioning. Collect all the corpses of the godly state in the void. Also, give Xiao Ran, Jiling Fei, and the Dragon Gate Academy a godly artifact. Wang Xian instructed Prime Minister Gui. "It's the Dragon King." Prime Minister Gui replied immediately. Dragon King, can you give me a divine kingdom? I'm only 1 divine kingdom away from upgrading it." At this moment, Chen Feiyang came over and said with a smile. Lu Mingxin, who was beside him, rolled her eyes at him. "Sure, pick any divine kingdom here. I'll give you the resources inside as well." Wang Xian said to Chen Feiyang with a smile. Recently, Chen Feiyang and Lu Mingxin had been very close. It seemed that the 2 of them might be together. As Ling Xiu's disciple and Xiao Ran's sister, Wang Xian was naturally very generous. Moreover, Chen Feiyang possessed some of the constitution of Kun and was indirectly controlled by Lan Qingyue. He could be considered as one of them. "Thank you, Dragon King. I have already set my sights on using the divine kingdom of the 8 wisps of divine fire god. When I become the eternal God Lord in the future, I will definitely repay you well." Chen Feiyang thickened his skin and flew directly towards the divine kingdom of the 8 wisps of divine fire god. Wang Xian smiled and did not stop him. With more than 100 divine kingdoms, the resources in them as well as the corpses could greatly increase the strength of the Dragon Palace. Among the corpses were 2 gods with 9 wisps of divine fire. The members of the Dragon Palace began to clean up the battlefield. The disciples of the Dragon Gate Academy who participated in the battle were also excited to receive the interspatial rings of the disciples of the 5 major forces. All of them were excited. Now, our Earth can be considered to have arrived in this area with great strength, right? The Dragon Palace is too powerful. There are more than 100 godly state experts, and this is even before the space beast makes a move. With the current strength of the Dragon Palace, it should be able to suppress an area in the boundless star field, right? On Earth, everyone was discussing with heated faces. At this moment, everyone once again realized the power and invincibility of the Dragon Palace. The disciples who had followed the gods had completely lost all hope. Even the 5 major forces had been destroyed by the Dragon King's Dragon Palace. What else could they do? Many disciples were still thinking of returning to their own forces after returning to the boundless galaxy. Now, it seemed that there was no longer a need. Some people were even considering whether they should join the Dragon Gate Academy. They knew that with the current strength of the Dragon Palace, it could definitely be ranked in the top 3 outside of the 5 major forces in the boundless galaxy. How terrifying! Let's go back. Wang Xian looked at the group of girls beside him and waved his hand at Huarkire, who was riding on the golden lion not far away. We found a nice-looking divine weapon. Old Wang, take a look. Huar rode the golden lion to Wang Xian's side with a smile on her face. She waved the lotus-like wood-type artifact in her hand. Call me daddy, little girl. Guan Shuqing saw Huar coming over and heard her address her. She teased her. I won't. You're the little girl. Huar pouted at her. Guan Shuqing and the rest smiled. Although Huarkire was a god who had been resurrected and might have lived for thousands of years, Guan Shuqing and the rest realized that the two of them were not as mature as they were. It was unknown how they became gods in the first place. This also made Guan Shuqing and the rest have a good impression of the two girls. They would often bicker with each other when they were free, and it was harmonious. And because of Guan Shuqing and the rest, the two girls stopped calling Wang Xian father and called him Old Wang instead. Wang Xian smiled at the side and rubbed Huar's head. Let's go. We have obtained quite a lot of treasures this time. You can take whatever you like when the time comes. As he spoke, he led the group of girls toward the Dragon Palace. At the same time, while the Dragon Palace was clearing the battlefield and clearing the harvest, it was located in the east of the boundless galaxy. In the center of the east, there was an enormous void forest. The roots of the strange trees in the forest were rooted in the void. Each tree was more than 10 kilometers in size and 5 to 6 kilometers in height. The roots and branches of these trees were connected together, forming a void ground. The entire forest was at least 100 times the size of Earth. In the center of the forest, there was an unusually large divine tree. The entire divine tree was blooming with divine light. It stood tall in the void. It was 100 kilometers in size, with luxuriant branches and leaves that covered an area of several thousand kilometers. This was one of the most famous areas in the boundless star field. In the east, Eternal Divine Leaf. The place where Divine Leaf Divine Master lived was the residence of one of the 5 Eternal Divine Masters of the boundless star field. At this moment, a vast figure flew out from the top of the divine tree. The leader was a middle-aged man about 2-3 meters tall. Although the middle-aged man was tall, he looked slightly thin and weak. His clothes also made him look more scholarly. The middle-aged man held a wooden staff in his hand. In terms of power, this middle-aged man looked the weakest, even like a mortal. But it was also this extraordinary power that was very eye-catching. Chapter 2045. 2045. When the Eternal God Master arrives, all of you will submit. Let's go. At the leaf of the Eternal God of the East, the scholar-like middle-aged man said indifferently. He raised the seemingly ordinary wooden staff in his hand and lightly tapped the position in front of him. Buzz! The entire void seemed to tremble. A black hole slowly appeared, and the black hole slowly enveloped everyone behind him. Other than the middle-aged man, there were 40 to 50 figures behind him that contained enormous divine power. Buzz! The black hole closed. Buzz! Very quickly, everyone appeared on a planet. Grandfather! The dignified middle-aged man saw the black hole appear in front of him. His face revealed a respectful and cautious expression as he bowed towards the middle-aged man that slowly appeared. Lord God. Behind the middle-aged man, 5 figures hurriedly knelt down in the air and shouted loudly. Their faces were also extremely respectful. Even though they were all gods, when they faced this middle-aged man, they all knelt down from the bottom of their hearts. This was because the middle-aged man in front of them was the eternal divine leaf. Little Sen, pass me Xiaobei's position. The divine leaf god lord looked at the middle-aged man in front of him and said calmly, "It's Grandpa. According to one of my subordinates, 90% of that planet has a divine tomb, and there are 2 of them." The middle-aged man called Shaosen immediately said, "If there really are 2 of them." The divine leaf god lord muttered, his eyes shining. In the end, his grandson handed him a branch. He sensed it, and the wooden staff in his hand gently pointed forward. Buzz! The black hole appeared again. God Lord Shinai stepped inside, and the gods behind him followed. It's moving. That planet is moving again. They're ready to continue moving forward. In the chaotic starfield, the young man saw Earth moving forward again, and shouted in slight surprise. "I wonder what Lord God Lord and the others are." Buzz! Before Uncle Lin could finish his words, a black hole appeared out of thin air in front of them. "Greetings, Lord God Lord." Uncle Lin saw the figure in the black hole and immediately knelt down. "Great-grandfather." The young man also put away his careless temperament and immediately bowed in a cautious manner. Black hole travel was a unique ability of the eternal God Lord. Its speed was hundreds of times faster than the speed of light. The divine leaf god lord nodded and looked forward. "Xiaobei, is this the planet you mentioned?" He looked in the direction of Earth and asked the young man. "It's great-grandfather. I've been observing here for more than half a year. Just now, there were 5 forces and more than 100 gods waiting here for the arrival of this planet. We heard the leaders of the 5 forces say that they want to enter the divine tomb, but now they've been killed by the experts on this planet. We have a fallen god here. He can also confirm it." The young man immediately nodded and took the phantom condensed from the drop of divine blood. "Greetings, Lord God Master. What the young master said is all the truth. This lowly one doesn't dare to hide anything." The phantom saw God Lord Shinai kneeling down in excitement and immediately promised, "Lord God Lord, let's go investigate." At this time, the god standing behind immediately said respectfully. God Lord Shinai didn't say anything. His figure moved and came to the position directly in front of Earth. The gods knew the eternal God Lord's character and immediately flew toward Earth. "Uncles, stop this planet and take complete control." The middle-aged man called Shaosen said to the gods. "Yes." The gods floated in the air, and the 7 old men in the lead trembled. Flowers bloom, but they break, trapped. The 7 old men waved their arms, and thorns appeared in the void. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, the densely packed thorns seemed to be endless as they covered the entire Earth. The sudden appearance of this scene caused the people on Earth who were excitedly chatting to be completely stunned. They raised their heads and slightly opened their mouths, revealing expressions of shock on their faces. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The densely packed thorns were each 100 meters thick, and they directly covered the entire Earth. Rumble! At this moment, rays of green light enveloped the Earth, and the Earth directly stopped in the void. Furthermore, the thorns directly surrounded the entire Earth, completely sealing it off. Only a few hundred kilometers ahead of them was an exit. Seeing this terrifying scene, everyone's faces were filled with shock. What's going on? Hiss, could it be that there are even more powerful experts coming to attack us? Heavens, the entire Earth is completely enveloped, Everyone was stunned. This scene was far more shocking than the 5 great powers' attack earlier. The entire Earth was completely covered. What kind of existence could do this? God Lord Shinai has arrived. All of you will submit. At this moment, a vast voice resounded throughout the entire earth. God Lord Shinai? Eternal God Lord? Hearing this voice, everyone trembled and revealed an incredulous expression. Eternal God Lord, it's actually the eternal God Lord who has arrived. My God, this? How could it be? There's actually an eternal God Lord here. What is this kind of existence doing here? It's over. He has directly trapped our earth. He doesn't come with good intentions. Everyone had a hint of fear on their faces. They didn't know how powerful the Eternal Lord was. Even the former Divine Lord Guangyi was a fallen Divine Lord. There was less than 1/10 of his strength left. Moreover, this Divine Leaf Divine Lord was one of the overlords who had suppressed the boundless star field. Such an existence wasn't something that the Divine Lord Guangyi could compare to. Eternal God Lord? At this moment, the expressions of Wang Xian and the others who were in the Dragon Palace's Dragon King Hall changed drastically when they heard this voice. They moved and immediately arrived above the Dragon Palace. An eternal God Lord was definitely not someone that the Dragon Palace could contend against. Even with Ao Crab around, it would be difficult for him to fight against an eternal God Lord who had suppressed the boundless star field for hundreds of thousands of years. It was already good enough for him to escape unscathed. When they were floating on the surface of the sea and looking at the sky, their expressions changed slightly. The entire earth had been completely enveloped. Shu Qin, Qin Yu, Feng Wan, you girls, immediately move the Dragon Palace to the Transcendence Continent. Wang Xian immediately said to them, Little Xian. The girls were slightly shocked and their expressions changed drastically. The Dragon Palace can't withstand the attack of the Eternal Lord. Just in case, you guys should head to the Transcendence Continent first. Wang Xian looked at them and said solemnly, No, we'll go. What about you guys, Xiao Xian? The group of girls' expressions changed slightly as they said anxiously, We'll take a look at the specific situation first. However, to be on the safe side, the Dragon Palace will move the Transcendence Continent first. You guys should follow them too. Quick. Surrender. Just as Wang Xian finished his sentence, an extremely terrifying pressure enveloped Earth. At this moment, even Wang Xian's body trembled. Quick. He urged the group of girls and looked at the members of the Dragon Palace. Let's go. Chapter 2046. 2046. Eternal God, kneel down. Buzz. I am the Dragon King of the Dragon Palace on Earth. I am here to pay my respects to you, God Yi. May I know why you have come to Earth? After Wang Xian finished speaking to the group of girls, he led dozens of godly state experts from the Dragon Palace and flew toward the entrance. At the same time, Wang Xian's voice was transmitted to them. However, there was no response from the sky. When they flew out from the exit, they immediately saw dozens of figures outside. At the front, dozens of vast voices were suspended in the air. The leaders were 7 old men. Each of them had a terrifying aura. Peak of the godly state. Sensing the might of the 7 of them, Wang Xian was slightly shocked. His face was filled with a solemn expression. There were 7 peak of the godly state. The group of gods behind them were all above 5 wisps of godly fire. In the middle of the void at the back, a middle-aged man stood there quietly. At a glance, it was as if the entire sky was centered around that middle-aged man. Father, they are the experts on this planet. That middle-aged man is very strong. He easily killed 2 gods with 9 wisps of divine fire. The young man walked to his father's side and reminded him softly. Okay. The middle-aged man nodded his head with a dignified expression. His gaze swept across Wang Xian and the rest as he narrowed his eyes slightly. If you meet the god of divine leaves, kneel down immediately. He took 2 steps towards the void slowly as he shouted at Wang Xian and the rest with a dignified gaze. In an instant, waves of extremely terrifying pressure swept towards Wang Xian and the rest. Everyone's expression changed drastically. Umph. Ao Crab's body shook as a wave of black soil filled the surroundings, completely blocking their pressure. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, the Divine Leaf Master looked over slowly. As far as he could see, a thorn cage had appeared around Wang Xian and the rest, completely enveloping them. Not good break. Ao Crab raised his arm. His entire arm immediately transformed into a dragon claw and attacked the cage directly. Bang! However, when the sharp claw landed on the cage, it only left a crack on it. This is bad. Ao Crab's heart sank, and his face revealed an extremely grave expression. Dragon King, his strength is very, very strong. He said to Wang Xian with an embarrassed expression. When the Divine Lord of Shinai saw a crack on the cage, he swept a glance at Ao Crab and turned his gaze to Earth. There is no tomb of the gods on this planet. At this moment he spoke slowly. There is no god's tomb. His words caused the expressions of everyone around to change drastically. The young man widened his eyes and let out a cry of surprise. How is this possible? How can there be no god's tomb? Didn't you say that there is a god's tomb? He looked at the god's blood phantom that Uncle Lin was holding and said with a somewhat embarrassed expression. Lord Godmaster, the information we received is 100% that there is a god's tomb. How can it be? Could it be that the god's tomb has been obtained by them? It must be. Otherwise, this planet that walked out from the ruins wouldn't have such an expert. The divine blood phantom trembled as it roared. The Divine Leaf Master slowly frowned, his face revealing a deep disappointment. If there were really two divine tombs here, he might be able to allow his wife to step into the Eternal Master realm. Now, Wang. His body moved, and he continued flying forward, entering through the entrance. Boom! At the same time, an imposing aura surged toward Earth. Is this the Eternal God Lord? Hiss, Eternal God Lord, this is the Eternal God Lord, how terrifying! Under the pressure of the 7-peak godly state experts, everyone was either kneeling or lying on the ground. When God Lord Shinai descended, everyone felt as if the sky was falling. Everyone looked at the figure in the sky with extremely pale faces. Great-grandfather, is there really no god tomb? The youth following behind couldn't help but fly over and ask God Lord Shinai. The other gods followed closely behind. The 7-peak divine realm elders waved their hands and brought the cage over. That's the Dragon King. The Dragon King and the others are trapped in that cage. Oh my God, we're doomed. We're doomed. When everyone on Earth saw the Dragon King and the others trapped in the cage, they were all shocked. Even the Dragon King and the others were subdued in an instant. Was this the Eternal God Lord? Everyone took a deep breath and looked at the Divine Leaf God Lord in the sky with fear. Quick, quick, we'll immediately move the Dragon Palace to the Extraordinary Continent. Even if we die, we can be resurrected through the Dragon Palace. At this moment, in the ocean, a group of girls said anxiously. The authority of the Dragon Palace had been given to them, and they could move the earth. They had never thought that an eternal God would come here. The girls' faces were a bit ugly and full of worry. If we escape now, then what about Father and the others? Huar and Kair were even more anxious as they spoke to the girls. If we stay here now, we'll only add trouble. Only by escaping from here can Xiao Xian and the others truly be safe. Feng Yuan rationally spoke to the two little girls. The two little girls looked at them at a loss. But, at this moment, the Dragon Palace trembled slowly and was prepared to move. You guys have obtained the god's tomb? In the sky, the young man looked at Wang Xian and the rest with an embarrassed expression and shouted sternly. Everyone, we don't have a god's tomb here. When Wang Xian heard their words, his expression changed slightly and he immediately said, Damn it, how can there not be a god's tomb? The young man's expression was a little ugly. The young man's father, who was beside him, also frowned slightly. Suddenly, a look of surprise appeared on the face of the god of Shinai. He raised his eyebrows and waved the wooden staff in his hand slightly in the direction of the ocean. Prek, prek, prek. In the sky, an incomparably huge wooden palm slowly formed. The palm area reached a radius of 1,000 kilometers as it directly grabbed towards the ocean. Oh no! Wang Xian's expression changed instantly when he saw the divine leaf god making his move. Roar! Ao Crab roared and attacked the cage again. Boom! However, the cage seemed to be indestructible. After a few consecutive attacks, the cage could not be broken. Crash! In the ocean, the terrifying wooden claw slowly grabbed the dragon palace. The terrifying strength resisted the strength of the wooden claw. However, a level 6 dragon palace could only withstand attacks below the level of the Eternal Lord. It could not withstand the attacks of the Divine Leaf Lord. Oh no, our dragon palace has been discovered. In the Dragon King's palace, the group of girls were horrified when they saw that the dragon palace was out of control. Oh no, Daddy and the rest are trapped. Huarkaya noticed that Wang Xian and the rest were trapped and her expression changed slightly. Get out! They immediately rode on the golden lion and flew out. Chapter 2047. 2047 Eternal God Master 2047 knelt down. Get out! Inside the Dragon Palace, Prime Minister Gui's expression changed slightly when he saw the Dragon Palace being grabbed by a terrifying claw. He immediately ordered loudly. All the members of the Dragon Palace immediately flew to the Dragon Palace. Boom, boom, boom. Instantly, more than 26,000 members flew out of the Dragon Palace. Every member of the Dragon Palace emitted a powerful battle intent. Let go of our Dragon King. They stared at the Divine Leaf God Master and his group in the air and roared. Hiss! At this moment, everyone on Earth looked toward the ocean. When they saw the Dragon Palace being grabbed into the air, their eyes widened in shock. The Invincible Dragon King and the Invincible Dragon Palace in their hearts had no power to resist the Divine Leaf God Master at all. This was too terrifying. The fate of Earth would depend on God Lord Shinai. God Lord Shinai didn't respond to the roars of the members of the Dragon Palace. It was as if he didn't respond at all. His eyes were full of surprise as he stared at the Dragon Palace that had been captured into the void. Dragon King? Humph, all of you kneel down in the void and surrender. Otherwise, you will die. God Lord Shinai didn't speak, but it didn't mean that the others didn't speak. Kneel. The young man's father looked at everyone in the Dragon Palace and shouted coldly. Kneel. Seeing that they dared to offend the God Lord, the 7 elders didn't show any anger on their faces. They stepped forward, and a terrifying pressure enveloped everyone in the Dragon Palace. All the disciples of the Dragon Palace trembled slightly. In front of a peak stage God Realm expert, a trace of fear appeared on their faces. They couldn't be defeated by force. What a terrifying pressure! Huar and Kair felt the pressure coming from the crowd below the Dragon Palace, and their bodies trembled slightly. The 2 golden lions were even trembling as they sat down and howled in low voices. It was too terrifying. At this moment, the entire earth was silent, and everyone's breathing was somewhat hurried as they looked on with pale faces. Sister! Suddenly, a trembling and excited voice sounded. Huar was slightly stunned. She looked at her elder sister and saw that her elder sister's eyes were slightly red. Her face was filled with astonishment. Little sister, look at him. Does he look like him? Does he look like him? Kair pointed at the indifferent Divine Leaf God Master in the air and said with a trembling body, Why, elder sister? Huar looked over. When she saw God Lord Shinye's face, she was completely stunned. It seems, even his aura is similar. In an instant, Huar's eyes turned red. Her body moved, and she blankly flew toward the strange yet familiar figure in the sky. Kair also stared at that figure and flew directly over. Huar, Kair, be careful. When Guan Shuqing and the other girls saw that the 2 were actually charging toward God Lord Divine Leaf, their expressions changed greatly, and they immediately cried out in alarm. Huarcaire ignored their cries and blankly flew forward. A distance of several hundred kilometers was very close to them, who had already ignited 3 wisps of divine fire. Huarcaire flew over, instantly causing the eternal divine leaf gods in the void. The young man and his father who were standing in the void raised their eyebrows slightly. Their eyes were cold. Huarcaire, go back. Wang Xian was also stunned when he saw the 2 girls rushing over. He immediately shouted. This time, the 2 girls did not listen to him. Their eyes were fixed on the figure. The god of divine leaves, who seemed to be independent from the rest of the world, swept his indifferent gaze over. His eyes, which had not shown the slightest fluctuation, were sparkling. His hand holding the wooden staff trembled slightly. His body, which seemed to be able to support the heavens and the earth, seemed to have bent slightly. He fixed his gaze on the 2 figures flying over. Big block. At this moment, Huara suddenly shouted, her eyes filled with tears. The gods behind God Lord Shinai frowned and looked at her with some bewilderment. Stop. The young man's father was full of confusion. He took a step behind God Lord Shinai and shouted at Huarcaire. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a pressure came toward him, causing him to be slightly startled. He immediately looked at his grandfather. Plop. Everyone was shocked. Under the incredulous gazes of the eternal gods, their Lord God Lord actually knelt down in the void. He flew towards the 2 girls and knelt down, slowly spreading his arms. What made them tremble even more was that at this moment, God Lord Godleaf's tears flowed down. Daddy! Daddy! Huacaire's tears flowed down as she threw herself into God Lord Godleaf's embrace. Little Yu Wen, little Yu Ro. I didn't expect that you guys. God Lord Shinai spread his arms and hugged Huar tightly as he called out softly in excitement. Yuan? Yu Ro. Seeing their God Lord kneeling in the air and hugging 2 little girls who were only about 1.6 meters tall, the eternal leaf gods were slightly shocked. Hearing his grandfather's words, the dignified middle-aged man widened his eyes and was filled with disbelief. When Yuro, these 2 names were his aunt's names. He had never met his aunt. Even his father, who had already died, did not have a deep impression of his 2 sisters. He only knew that his 2 aunts had died unexpectedly when his father was 5 or 6 years old. As for how they died, he did not know, and no one dared to ask. Not long after his 2 aunts died, his grandfather stepped into the eternal divine Lord realm. And in less than 10 years, his grandfather gained another title. Deadwood Divine Leaf. What was a deadwood? A deadwood. He learned from his father that because of the death of his 2 aunts, his grandfather became sick from longing for them. He made an unexpected breakthrough and became a deadwood divine leaf. His expression was cold, neither sad nor happy. He had only seen his grandfather smile when Xiaobei was born. They are my aunts. The mighty middle-aged man was slightly stunned as he looked at this scene in a daze. Behind him, the young man was completely stunned. He looked at this scene in a daze. His grandfather? Those 2 girls who had suddenly appeared? What was this? At the back, the 7 elders' expressions changed slightly when they saw what their God Lord had said and saw this scene. They waved their arms, immediately covering the entire area, making it impossible to see anything below. The 7 elders immediately flew forward and arrived at the back of God Lord Shinai. Greetings, your princesses. The 7 elders knelt in the air and called out respectfully. As the 7 strongest subordinates of the eternal God Lord, they had followed God Lord Shinai for more than 1 generation. Their father and even their grandfather had followed the God Lord. They naturally had to be familiar with everything about the God Lord. When they saw this scene, they knew that the 2 daughters that the God Lord had doted on the most, the 2 daughters that had caused the God Lord pain, were still alive. These were the princesses of their eternal God Leaf. They were also the pearl of the eternal God Leaf. Chapter 2048. 2048 separation. What happened? Why did I see the eternal God Master kneeling in front of the two girls just now? Am I seeing things? What's going on? What's the relationship between the two goddesses in the Dragon Palace and the Divine Leaf God Master? Why is it suddenly blocked? What's going on up there? On Earth, everyone looked surprised when they saw the terrifying Eternal God Master suddenly kneel in front of the two goddesses in the Dragon Palace and spread out his arms. What was going on? Unfortunately, the 7 old men covered up what was happening here. Walala! At this moment, the gods behind them saw the 7 old men kneel down and call out respectfully, and their faces were also filled with shock. "Greetings, Your Highness." They hurriedly leaned forward and knelt in the air, bowing to Huarcaire. "Aunt." The mighty middle-aged man opened his mouth and bowed. "Kneel down and pay your respects to Aunt." He saw his son's stunned expression behind him and immediately shouted, "Greetings, aunties." The young man quickly knelt on the ground and shouted. There was a father between his seniority and Huarcaire. Naturally, he had to kneel down. Huarcaire's father. At this moment, Wang Xian, who was trapped in the cage, was filled with astonishment when he saw this scene. He did not expect that the Eternal Lord who came over was actually the biological father of the two girls. One had to know that the two girls had fallen for hundreds of thousands of years before they were resurrected by chance. What a coincidence! Wang Xian mumbled to himself. When he saw this scene, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. With the relationship between Huarcaire, the crisis that they encountered this time could be resolved smoothly. Otherwise, he really didn't know what to do. "Daddy, all right. Don't cry. At this moment, Huar wiped the tears of the Divine Leaf God with her slightly red eyes and said with a smile, "Daddy is so happy, so happy." Divine Leaf Master didn't feel embarrassed at all. He gently touched their faces with both hands. "When we go back later, your mother will be very, very happy if she knows that you are still alive." Divine Leaf Master said happily. "Mommy is still alive." Huar was excited when she heard his words and immediately said, "Yes. Although your mother didn't break through to the Eternal God Lord realm, I obtained some treasures in the past to extend your mother's life." God Lord Shinai smiled. "What about your brother?" Caire hesitated for a moment and asked. "Your brother is old, but he has lived for 100,000 years. He didn't feel sad at all before he died. Your mother and I feel the most guilty about you two girls. Now that you have appeared in front of us, we are very happy." The god of divine leaves had a smile on his face. "Come, let father hug you. Remember when you two little girls ran out of the house to play? You must be this big too." He stood up slowly and held a little girl in each hand. He was as happy as a child. Hee. Huarcaire also smiled and held his neck. "Oh right, father, let me introduce someone to you." "Dad, let them go quickly," Huarcaire quickly said when they saw Wang Xian and the rest who were trapped. All right. The god of divine leaves nodded immediately and looked at Wang Xian and the rest. The cage was immediately released. At the same time, the huge wooden claw in the sky slowly placed the dragon palace into the ocean. "Dad, let me introduce to you. This is the person I met after my sister and I woke up. At that time, we were just a baby and he raised us up. He's our dad on earth." Huar jumped down from the arms of the god of leaves and came to Wang Xian's side. She held his arm and introduced him. "Dad on earth." The god of leaves was slightly stunned. There was a hint of jealousy in his eyes. However, when he saw how happy his daughter was, a smile appeared on his face. "Hello, big brother." Wang Xian opened his mouth and hesitated for a moment. Then, he extended his hand with a smile. Hello. I'm really grateful to you for what happened to Yuan and Yuro. If you need anything in the boundless galaxy in the future, you can look for me." He immediately extended his hand and said with a smile on his face. "Well, Yuan and Yuro, let me bring you guys home. Why don't you bring this planet to our eternal divine leaf? When we get there, I'll thank you properly, little brother. The divine leaf master said to Huar, Kair, and Wang Xian. That's right, old Wang. Why don't you bring Earth to our biological father's place? Eternal God, we will take care of you in the future. Huar immediately said with a smile. Go to the eternal divine leaf. Wang Xian was slightly taken aback. A hesitant look appeared on his face. He had heard of the name Eternal Divine Leaf before he came here. It was one of the 5 major forces of the Eternal Divine Leaf in the East. If it were the Eternal Leaf of the East, the development of Earth would not be too bad just based on Huar and Kair's relationship. Even the Dragon Palace would not dare to offend anyone in the entire boundless galaxy due to Huar and Kair's relationship. No, we have already confirmed where Earth is going. Wang Xian still rejected Huar and Kair's suggestion. With the current strength of the Dragon Palace, there was no need to rely on any force. As long as the Eternal Lord did not come personally, he would not be afraid. Furthermore, it might not be long before the Dragon Palace would be able to contend with the Eternal Lord. Going to the planet of the supernatural continent was the best choice and would allow for better development. You 2 girls should go back with your father first to visit your mother. If I have time, I will look for you. He looked at Huar and Kair and continued. No, why can't you come with us? That's right. Huar shook his arm reluctantly. All right. The Dragon Palace has its own development. I will look for you after settling down in the Dragon Palace. Wang Xian said to the 2 girls helplessly. All right then. You must promise to look for us as soon as possible. Huar pouted her lips at him. Don't worry. Wang Xian nodded his head. I have the celestial communication stone plate here. You can use the stone plate to contact us from any corner of the boundless celestial domain. Seeing how his daughter was so dependent on other men, God Master Shinai was extremely jealous. He felt as if his things had been robbed. However, he still took out 3 communication stone tablets and handed them to Wang Xian and his daughter. Thank you. Wang Xian nodded and took them. He then exchanged a few words with Huar Kair. We've agreed that you will come back to look for us after settling down on Earth. Chapter 2049. 2049-2049 arrived. Old Wang, don't forget our agreement. In the sky, Huar and Kair waved at Wang Xian. Wang Xian nodded with a smile and waved at them. You 2 little girls, hurry up and leave. Guan Shuqing and the rest had flown over just now. After receiving all the news, they joked with the 2 little girls. You bunch of narrow-minded women. It's not like we're snatching men from you. Huar Kair glared at them and said, if you bring us some good stuff when you come, we won't bother you 2 girls. The group of girls waved at them. Huar Kair smiled and looked at her father. Dad, let's go. I miss Mom. All right. Let's go. The smile on the god of divine leaves never stopped. He nodded immediately. He pointed forward and a black hole appeared in front of them. Huar Kair turned around and smiled at Wang Xian and the rest. She followed the god of divine leaves into the black hole. At the back, the gods of eternal divine leaf took a deep look at Wang Xian and the rest before following them into the black hole. This time, although they did not find the divine tomb and did not obtain any treasures, they had obtained an existence that made the eternal divine Lord even more precious. The young man had a smile on his face. He had contributed greatly to the encounter between the 2 grandaunts and his great-grandfather. This contribution was even greater than finding the divine tomb here. His great-grandfather would definitely reward him well this time. The 2 grandaunts have returned. Based on the great-grandfather and great-grandmother's love for the 2 grandaunts, I reckon that in the future, the entire eternal divine leaf will belong to the 2 grandaunts. I'll have to please the 2 grandaunts properly in the future. He thought to himself, thinking about how to please the 2 grandaunts in the future. What he didn't know was that his father had the same thoughts at this moment. I didn't expect these two girls to be the daughters of the God Lord of the boundless star field. This time, it's all thanks to these two girls. Seeing Huar Kyer and the others leave, the group of girls sighed. Without these two girls, it's a lot less fun. Feng Yuan smiled. Let's go. Let's continue flying towards the direction of the supernatural continent. Wang Xian said as they returned to the Dragon Palace. Earth was activated once again as they flew towards the direction of the supernatural continent. It's over. Has the eternal God left? It seems like there are people in the Dragon Palace who are relatives of the eternal God. It's good that everything is fine. It's good that everything is fine. The eternal God is really terrifying. I reckon that he can easily destroy Earth. Everyone on Earth watched the matter end in confusion. They were both surprised and slightly relieved. The eternal God Lord was so powerful that Earth was not something the Dragon Palace could contend against. It was a great fortune for them to be able to avoid this crisis. Earth flew out of the chaotic space zone again and entered the boundless space zone. The Transcendence continent is located in a remote corner in the north. It can be considered as the northern region of the boundless starfield. The force that shook the northern region is eternal thunderclap. The Lord of Thunderclap is suppressing the north. We estimate that we will be able to get close to the Transcendence continent in a week's time. In the Dragon Palace, Wang Xian stood in front of the star chart and listened to Prime Minister Gui's report. In the south of the Transcendence continent, there are 5 to 6 life planets that are relatively close. With the speed of the 5 wisps of divine fire, we can reach them within a month. We can connect to the array formation and teleport instantly. These 5 to 6 life planets are not eternal thunderbolts. Our Dragon Palace can occupy them. Prime Minister Gui looked at the star chart and continued his analysis. Wang Xian nodded his head slightly. Every time the Dragon Palace occupied the ocean of a planet, they would be rewarded by the system. Furthermore, the rewards were extremely generous. Occupying the ocean of a planet was a means for the rapid development of the Dragon Palace. Currently, the number of members of the Dragon Palace is still too small. At the very least, we have to double it. If we can occupy these 5 to 6 planets, let's see if we can recruit more members. Now, leave half of the resources in the Dragon Palace for the promotion of new members in the future. Wang Xian pondered for a moment and said to Prime Minister Gu, "It's the Dragon King. We should indeed increase the number of members of the Dragon Palace." Prime Minister Gui nodded in agreement. There were more than 26,000 subordinates of the Dragon Palace now, but that was not a lot. In fact, it was only a drop in the ocean in this boundless galaxy. They had to increase the number of members of the Dragon Palace to at least 50,000. Although there were more members of the Dragon Palace and more resources needed to increase the number, they could let the disciples of the Dragon Palace go out for training in the future. They could let the disciples of the Dragon Palace enter this vast and boundless galaxy to search for their own opportunities. Time passed slowly while Wang Xian and Prime Minister Gui were discussing the future development of the Dragon Palace. After experiencing the incident with the Divine Leaf Master, Wang Xian and the rest were much more vigilant this time. Dragon King, the extraordinary mainland has appeared in our sight. 7 days passed very quickly. At this time, Earth had already arrived at its designated location, near the planet of the extraordinary mainland. Place Earth in front of the planet of the Transcendence continent and rotate according to the laws of the universe. Wang Xian immediately instructed Prime Minister Gui. "It's the Dragon King." Prime Minister Gui nodded. "Xiao Xian, do you want to connect the passageway between the Transcendence continent and Earth so that the people of the Transcendence continent can enter Earth and Earth can enter the Transcendence continent?" Feng Yuan walked over and asked Wang Xian. "Yes, some of the cultivation grounds of the Divine Kingdom on Earth are great opportunities for the people from the supernatural continent. We can start with the elite members of the Dragon and Phoenix Empire and let them cultivate in the Divine Kingdom on Earth." Wang Xian nodded his head. "Dragon King, it's best if we can open a passageway with other planets so that we can develop faster." Prime Minister Gui added from the side. Let's settle down on Earth for the time being. After that, we can investigate the situation of the surrounding planets and make preparations. Wang Xian said and flew out of the Dragon Palace immediately. He looked forward. At this moment, there was an incomparably huge planet in front of them. This planet was dozens of times the size of Earth. But at this moment, Earth stopped in front of the huge planet and began to rotate slowly. Have we reached our destination? Everyone on Earth looked at the huge planet in front of them with shocked expressions. We should have arrived. Look at the planet in front of us. That is a life planet with an oasis and an ocean. Some experts flew into the sky and said in surprise. At the same time, on the extraordinary continent, some experts also noticed the planet that suddenly appeared in their void space and looked at it in shock. Two distant planets, looking at each other for the first time. Chapter 2050. 2050 2059 Dragon's Divine Throne, Descend. That planet is called the Transcendental Continent. Its area is dozens of times larger than Earth. The Dragon Phoenix Empire rules over the entire continent. That planet is called Earth. It used to be the Dragon King's former residence. Now, the Dragon King has moved it to the sky above our Transcendental Continent. When Earth completely settled beside the Transcendental Continent planet, news spread to Earth and the Transcendental Continent one by one. A demigod-level powerhouse could enter another planet in half a day's time. Wang Xian did not prohibit the connection between Earth and the supernatural continent. On the contrary, the connection between the two planets could promote the development of the two planets. The current rule of the Transcendence was the Dragon Phoenix Empire. In the past few years, it had flourished. The number of demigod-level powerhouses had increased by dozens. Because of the rule of the Dragon Phoenix Empire, all kinds of prodigies emerged. As long as they were geniuses, they would not be hidden. In the following period of time, some people entered Earth, and some people entered the extraordinary continent. After going to another Earth, many people also learned more about the Dragon King. Especially the people on Earth. Now they finally knew why the Dragon King could rise so quickly. They also knew why the Dragon Palace had so many terrifying powerhouses. It turned out that the Dragon King had this planet as his backing. The communication between the two planets was mainly made up of elites. As time passed, it gradually calmed down. Earth was completely stabilized in this piece of starry sky. Half a year passed very quickly. Wang Xian also accompanied a group of girls during this half a year. He had taken down Feng Luan not long ago. She was also handling some matters in the Dragon Phoenix Empire. The main task was to handle the relationship between the supernatural continent and Earth. Furthermore, she had placed some of the divine kingdoms in the supernatural continent in preparation to nurture powerhouses and gods. On Earth, the Dragon Gate Academy was the main force. The two of them had set some rules. Dragon King, Ao Yao and the others want to see you. In the Dragon King Palace, Prime Minister Gei, Ao Yao, and the other 10 thorn dragon species came to pay their respects. After killing more than 100 immortals from the 5 forces, the Dragon Palace's strength had increased greatly. 8 more thorn dragon species were born after fusing with the darkness divine spark. 5 more berserk dragon species were born. Apart from that, the strength of the members of the Dragon Palace who had ignited the divine fire had also improved. The last time, only half of the resources were consumed. Apart from adding some thorn dragons and berserk dragons, Wang Xian used the rest to raise the strength of the members of the Dragon Palace who were in the godly state. Currently, the strength of the top-notch members of the Dragon Palace had ignited 2 or 3 wisps of divine fire. Compared to the Dragon Palace in the past, their strength had improved tremendously. In addition, the group of small-sized devouring dragons in Ao Crab's body had ignited the divine fire after devouring 70 to 80 divine kingdoms. They were extremely powerful. Now, there were more than 160 people who had ignited the divine fire in the Dragon Palace. Greetings, Dragon King. Ao Yao and the rest bowed and greeted Wang Xian. How is it? Wang Xian asked them. 3 months ago, Wang Xian had sent Ao Yao and the rest to investigate the situation of the other planets in this starfield. Dragon King, among the 6 planets that we have investigated, there are gods in 3 of them. The strongest planet has 2 gods. Ao Yao reported to Wang Xian. A total of 4 gods. Wang Xian nodded his head slightly. Yes, a total of 4 gods. However, we are not sure if there are any gods that have left their planet temporarily. Ao Yao said. Are there any gods that are connected to the outside world on the planets that have gods? Wang Xian asked. Yes, there is one planet where the gods enslave the gods and earn some resources by selling people. The similarity between these 6 planets is that they are lacking in resources and do not support the birth of more gods. Wang Xian nodded slightly when he heard Ao Yao's words. He had also heard some of what Ji Lingfei had said. Some life planets were lacking in resources and did not support the birth of gods. Such planets would be abandoned by the gods over time. This was also the reason why these planets were not ruled by eternal thunder. I wonder how those gods communicate with the outside world. Let's ignore everything else and rule these 6 planets first. Wang Xian pondered for a moment. The only problem at the moment was to get in touch with the outside world first and construct a space teleportation formation with the other planets. With the formation, Earth and the Transcendence continent would be able to integrate into the entire boundless galaxy. Get ready. We will descend to the other 6 planets and rule the oceans. Wang Xian said to Prime Minister Gui and the rest. It's the Dragon King. Prime Minister Gui nodded immediately and went outside to get ready. Xiao Xian, are you going out? A group of girls walked over and asked him. Yes. After I rule over the oceans of those 6 planets, you can go to those planets to have some fun. Wang Xian smiled and nodded at them. All right, then we will go to the Transcendence continent with Sister Feng Luan now. The group of girls nodded their heads. Dragon King, the carriage is ready. At this moment, Prime Minister Gui walked in and reported. All right. Wang Xian nodded his head and flew to the sky above the ocean. Roar. At this moment, in the sky above the Dragon Palace, 9 green dragons were pulling a dragon carriage. The majestic canopy that was emitting divine radiance was on top of the dragon carriage. Around the dragon carriage, Ao Jian's 6 dragon guards were on both sides. Ao Nu stood on the dragon carriage with a cattail leaf fan in her hand. At the back, the 10 berserk dragon species were emitting a terrifying aura. Let's go! Wang Xian took a look and flew directly to the dragon carriage of the Dragon Palace. Let's go to the first planet. Wang Xian sat on the dragon carriage and said calmly. Roar! It's the Dragon King. The 9 green dragons roared and the green wind a tribute gathered around them. The green light enveloped Wang Xian and the rest. They vanished instantly and teleported towards the vast starry sky. In the vast void, 9 gigantic green dragons that were 5,000 meters in size were pulling a divine chariot as they flew through the void. The 9 dragons transformed into green dragons after igniting the divine flames. The speed of the green dragons was the fastest among the group of divine dragons. When they erupted at full speed, their speed was more than 10 times faster than the speed of light. Coupled with the occasional teleportation, their speed was even more terrifying. But even so, it would still take them more than 10 days to reach the nearest life planet. More than 10 days passed quickly in the void. Dragon King, the first planet is about to arrive. 13 days later, Ao Jian's voice came from outside. Have we arrived? Wang Xian slowly opened the curtain in front of the divine seat and looked forward. A planet appeared in his line of sight. The planet was about 10 times the size of Earth and the ocean occupied almost 60% of the entire world. The first life planet, Planet Akli, was named after a god. Chapter 2051 2051 9 Dragons Throne, Descent. Planet Akli, a cultivation planet similar to the extraordinary continent. The entire planet was dominated by the god of war, Akli. The people of the planet were intrepid, and various powers and countries were rampant. Wars often broke out. As the only god on this planet, the god of war stood high above in the palace of the god of war, for the people to worship. In the east of the continent, a vast ocean was surging. At this moment, on both sides of the ocean, the two forces were facing each other. Each force had more than 10 million people. At the front, 1 million people were floating in the sky. The atmosphere was extremely solemn. A war was about to break out. The ocean of the sky belongs to our war god empire. All the resources in it belong to our war god empire. Your Skyfire empire can forget about snatching them away from us. In the center of the right side of the team, an old man in armor shouted sternly. Belongs to you? Lord War God said this place belongs to you? If you didn't say it, then don't waste your breath. On the opposite side, a middle-aged man shouted with a cold face. The war god empire cannot be invaded. If you don't retreat, then prepare to accept the battle. The old man roared. Kill! Behind him, tens of thousands of soldiers roared with killing intent. Fight! On the other side, the middle-aged man was not afraid at all. His face was filled with a sinister expression as he roared with a ferocious face. Fight! Tens of thousands of soldiers also roared. Kill! The war had completely erupted. The killing intent of tens of thousands of people caused the entire sky to change color. What an interesting ant. However, what they didn't know was that in the god of war shop at the center of the continent, an old man looked in that direction and shook his head indifferently. Roar, roar, roar. Suddenly, in the sky above the entire planet, at the instant the war broke out, an incomparably terrifying roar enveloped the entire planet. Following that, an enormous pressure pressed down on the area below. Hua hua hua. At that moment, all the human creatures flying in the sky on the entire planet fell from the sky. Everyone looked up, their faces filled with shock. In the center of the battlefield, tens of thousands of warriors looked up, their faces filled with terror. In the god of war shop, when the indifferent old man heard the roar, his face changed drastically. Shit! His body moved, and he immediately flew into the sky. At that moment, the roar continued to ring out, and everyone on the planet trembled again. That's... At that moment, an old man pointed to the sky in shock and stared blankly at the divine carriage pulled by the 9 gigantic creatures. Their eyes widened, and they were filled with disbelief. But the 9 green dragons dashed forward and quickly arrived in the sky above the ocean. The visitors were naturally Wang Xian and the rest. Looking at the ocean below, Wang Xian stood up slowly and scanned the entire world. I, the Dragon King, have descended here and will establish the undersea dragon palace to control the ocean. Does anyone dare to oppose me? He opened his mouth slowly and his majestic voice spread to the ears of everyone in the world. On the battlefield, tens of thousands of people were stunned when they heard this, and their faces were filled with shock. Who are they? What kind of existence are they? An old man's expression changed drastically as he spoke. Who stepped onto my planet, Akli? At this moment, the voice of the war god Akli sounded. The war god is here. They are invaders, the war god is here. On the battlefield, all the warriors were excited when they heard this voice. The god of war, who had not shown his face for over 1,000 years, had appeared. The god of war? Wang Xian heard this voice and looked over. His pair of mysterious eyes scanned the entire planet. In war, the lives of the people are in dire straits. The god of war is not worthy. After scanning the situation of the entire planet, Wang Xian slowly extended his hand. But a dragon claw was formed instantly and attacked a location of tens of millions of kilometers. What is that? At this moment, the god of war, Akli, who was flying in the sky, looked in the direction of Wang Xian and the rest. When he saw the 9 terrifying creatures with a strong suppressive force, he was shocked. However, when he saw that the 9 terrifying creatures were pulling a divine throne behind them, he widened his eyes. When he saw Wang Xian making a move, a terrifying expression appeared on his face. Oh no, the opponent's strength is definitely not something I can fight against. Fuck, I was only thinking of spending my old age on this planet. How could such a terrifying existence take a liking to this broken planet? The god of war, Ackley's expression changed drastically as he hurriedly fled into the distance. However, at the next moment, that terrifying dragon claw directly grabbed his body. His entire body erupted with terrifying flames, but it was still of no use. The war god Ackley's expression changed drastically. Lord, spare me! Spare me! He hurriedly shouted out in terror. Wang! Under the shocked gazes of many people on the continent, the dragon claw grabbed their invincible war god and flew towards the direction of the ocean. This is... At the edge of the sea, the tens of millions of people on the battlefield looked at the god of war who was easily grabbed by a wave of his arm. Their faces were filled with astonishment. No, sir, please spare my life. Please spare my life. At this moment, the god of war, Ackley, was begging Wang Xian for mercy with a face full of fear. Your life is not worthy of being spared. Soul Catcher. Wang Xian said calmly. Soul Catcher was used directly on this god of war. He wanted to kill a god with 2 wisps of divine fire. He could just crush him to death. But after Soul Catcher was used, the wailing sounds of heaven and earth rang out. A cloud of fire covered the sky. He's dead. The god of war is actually dead. Everyone was stunned. They looked at this scene in disbelief. System, build a dragon palace. Wang Xian had absorbed his memories. He didn't check immediately and spoke to the system. Host, please prepare sufficient resources to build a dragon palace. The main dragon palace has reached level 6 and can build a level 5 dragon palace. The materials are complete. Are you ready to build it? Build it. Wang Xian replied immediately. Rumble. Soon, a level 5 dragon palace that was more than 200 kilometers long appeared at the bottom. The moment the dragon palace appeared, all the creatures in the entire ocean were bowing in this direction. Ding. Congratulations to Host for occupying the planet's ocean. Ding. Host has occupied more than 2 of the planet's oceans. You are rewarded with the teleportation formation of the Dragon Palace. At this moment, the system's voice sounded, and Wang Xian was delighted. Let's go in and take a look. Wang Xian moved his body and entered the Dragon Palace below. A level 5 Dragon Palace was almost comparable to the Kingdom of God. On this planet, it was considered the best. All the aquatic creatures on this planet can head to the Dragon Palace. If you pass the Dragon Gate, you can become a disciple of the Dragon Palace, just like my Dragon Palace. Wang Xian entered the Dragon Palace and took a look. Then he let out a voice that spread across the entire planet and entered everyone's ears. Chapter 2052. 2052's expedition to the boundless star field. The war god is dead and was killed in an instant. That group of people is so terrifying. A peerless expert from outer space, the Dragon King, established a dragon palace? All the Water Tribe members can break through the Dragon Gate? Hiss, an expert from outer space actually established a force. If only I could join. On Ackley Planet, everyone's faces were filled with shock as they listened to this voice. This was especially so for the demonic beasts in the sea of this planet. An existence that could easily kill the god of war was recruiting aquatic creatures. This was simply a huge opportunity for them. If they could join the Dragon Palace, what was there to be afraid of on this planet? Teleportation formation of the Dragon Palace. Wang Xian ignored the shock from the outside world. He came to the front of the east gate of the Dragon Palace and looked at the gigantic teleportation formation. In the center of the formation, The shadows of 9 divine dragons were hidden on the ground, swaying their bodies slowly. When Wang Xian entered, an option immediately appeared in front of his eyes. Teleportation, Earth Dragon Palace. Teleportation, Transcendent Continent Dragon Palace. Oh! Wang Xian's eyes sparkled as he immediately chose Earth Dragon Palace. But in an instant he felt as though he had entered a black hole. After a full minute, his figure appeared in front of the east gate of Earth Dragon Palace. Dragon King. When he appeared, he saw Prime Minister Gue standing by the side and calling out to him respectfully. Dragon King, this is? The teleportation formation between our Dragon Palace? Prime Minister Gue asked in astonishment. Yes. Wang Xian smiled when he saw that he had returned to the Dragon Palace on Earth. With the teleportation formation of the Dragon Palace, it would be much easier to handle some matters in the future. Furthermore, if there was a problem in the Dragon Palace, they would be able to react instantly. Prime Minister Gue, the ocean of a planet has been controlled. Send some people over to take care of it and recruit some members. Wang Xian said to Prime Minister Gue. It's the Dragon King. I will bring some people over to prepare now. Prime Minister Gue nodded his head immediately. I'll go over first. Wang Xian stepped into the teleportation formation and returned to the Akeley Dragon Palace. At the same time, he had a thought. In the Dragon Palace, a clone flew into the teleportation formation and went straight to Akeley's Dragon Palace. Now, Wang Xian had 7 clones, and each of them was equivalent to one of himself. He could totally let his clone stay here. Let's take a look at the memories of the God of War. Wang Xian sat on the dragon chair and immediately checked all the memories of the God of War. The God of War, Akeley, had lived for tens of thousands of years. He should know a lot about the boundless galaxy. The free planet? In the God of War's memories, Wang Xian found some useful information. The most important one was the free planet. The free planet was also known as the merchant planet. This planet was very special. It focused on trade and prohibited any fighting and killing. On the free planet, spirit stones could be used to teleport to many life planets and some powerful domains in the boundless star field. Earth could also set up a formation leading to the free planet. With the free planet as a transit point, one could travel to at least 100 life planets and powerful domains. It seems like I have to set up a space teleportation formation leading to the free planet on Earth. Wang Xian thought to himself. Once it was built, the Dragon Palace would be able to proceed with its development. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At this moment, in the teleportation formation of the Dragon Palace, Prime Minister Gue and the other members appeared slowly. Prime Minister Gue, I'll leave this to you guys. I'll go and occupy the other planets. As Wang Xian spoke, he immediately flew to the divine chariot. The 9 green dragons roared and flew into the void. Next, they occupied the ocean of the other 5 planets. A month later, Wang Xian stood in the undersea dragon palace called Mingyang Planet with a smile on his face. In front of him, there were 2 middle-aged men kneeling. One was fat and the other was thin. They were very tall and very short. These 2 people were the gods on Mingyang Planet. They were also the only planet with 2 gods. This was the best planet among the 6 planets. Although it did not have many resources, the scenery was very beautiful. Furthermore, under the restriction of these 2 gods, the entire planet was thriving. In the future, as long as the Dragon King says the word, we will definitely go all out. Wang Xian did not kill these 2 gods. At this moment, some of them were kneeling in front of them in fear as they pledged their loyalty. They never expected that such a terrifying existence would descend on their planet. One had to know that their planet was considered one of the last existences in the entire boundless galaxy. They had no resources, no treasures, and no treasures. Only the 2 of them who were indifferent would be reluctant to part with their hometown and live here. Get up. I'll leave you 2 with something. When Prime Minister Gue and the rest walked out of the formation, Wang Xian said to them, Please give us your instructions, Dragon King. After witnessing the strength of Wang Xian and the rest, the two gods who had a wisp of divine fire did not dare to resist at all. Go to the free planet and set up a planet teleportation formation. Wang Xian instructed them. Dragon King, the cost of a planet teleportation formation is very huge. I have enough spirit stones here. Just do as I say. Wang Xian interrupted them and said directly. Yes, yes. The two of them nodded immediately. Follow me first. Wang Xian brought them to the Dragon Palace on Earth. Then he asked them to lead two members of the Dragon Palace to set up the formation. After the formation is set up, we will have to consider the future development. Wang Xian returned to the Dragon King's palace and sat on the dragon throne, deep in thought. Currently, the Dragon Palace occupied the ocean of 6 planets. However, those 6 planets were basically abandoned by the gods in the boundless starfield. They could not be compared to those planets with huge resources. As long as it was 2 wisps of divine fire or above, the gods would not be interested in these few planets. Without resources, it meant that it was difficult for the members of the Dragon Palace to improve quickly. The only way was to enter a more powerful planet or domain through the free planets. Only then would the Dragon Palace be able to develop rapidly. Otherwise, even if it was 100 years, the members of the Dragon Palace would only be able to improve by 1 level. However, although those 6 planets don't have much resources, the system rewards for ruling the ocean of a planet are very generous. Wang Xian looked at the system reward and revealed a smile. The arrow dragon species was a dragon species with terrifying long-range attacks. It was a dragon species at the peak of the Dragon Palace. The Gale dragon species was a small-scale dragon species. It was an intermediate-level dragon species of the Dragon Palace. The mother nest was a world. The entire mother nest was like a small universe. The space within it was enough to contain 10 Earths. Treasure-seeking ants were godly beasts that could find treasures. The dragon blood sword was an invincible godly sword. The power of the godly sword depended on the user's power. Chapter 2053. 2053 Conquering the Boundless Star Area. The arrow dragon was known as the dragon with the strongest long-range attack in the Divine Dragon Palace. The arrow dragon had the wind and metal attributes, which was a huge improvement for the Heavenly Eye Arrow division. The Gale dragon wasn't very useful to the Dragon Palace. It was basically useless. The mother nest and the treasure-seeking ant were treasures of the insect clan. The mother nest could store a large number of items, and the treasure-seeking ant was an extremely important and rare existence among the insect clan. Every large-scale Zerg race would have a treasure-seeking ant. The treasure-seeking ant could lead the race to find resources and treasures. The powerful treasure-seeking ant could even detect the existence of treasures within a few hundred light years. The treasure-seeking ant could be said to be a rare and special divine beast. Wang Xian sized up the treasure-seeking ant in his hand. It was only the size of a palm and had 6 antennae. The 6 antennae were pointed up, down, left, right, front, and back. The treasure-seeking ant did not have the slightest offensive power, but it possessed an extremely terrifying speed. The treasure-seeking ant can accurately detect the level of the treasure. Now that this treasure-seeking ant can explore an area of 100,000 kilometers, it's a rare divine beast. Wang Xian muttered to himself. He took out the mother nest that was the size of a palm and kept it in the mother nest. Clang! He took out the blood-red longsword in front of him. The hilt of the sword was in the form of a dragon head. The scabbard was made of dragon scales. As he took out the dragon blood sword, the 9 divine dragon phantoms on the hilt of the sword wound around the sword slowly. The entire dragon blood sword was made of dragon scales as the scabbard, dragon bones as the body of the sword, and dragon blood as the soul. Furthermore, it was made of the divine dragon's 9 transformations: divine dragon scales, dragon bones, and dragon blood. Only those with pure divine dragon bloodline could use it. The stronger the bloodline, the stronger the ability to unleash it. This is my first divine dragon weapon. However, This dragon blood sword is much more powerful than my current 5 elements grinding technique. Wang Xian fondled it with fondness. Although he was not good at using a sword, such a cool sword was still something he loved. The oceans of the 6 planets were easily occupied. 6 clones were stationed there. Wang Xian had nothing to do for the time being. Now, all he had to do was wait quietly for the news. 3 months passed quickly while he accompanied a group of girls every day. Unknowingly, it had been a year since Earth came to the boundless galaxy. Dragon King, Ming Hua, and the 2 members of the Dragon Palace have returned. On this day, Prime Minister Gue came to the Dragon Palace and reported to Wang Xian. Are they back? Wang Xian was slightly stunned. A look of surprise and joy appeared on his face. He immediately went to the Dragon King's hall. Greetings, Dragon King. Ming Huiyang Fire was the 2 fire gods on Mingyang planet. 3 months ago, he went to the Free Planet with 2 disciples of the Dragon Palace to set up a formation. Have you brought the formation compass? Wang Xian looked at them and asked immediately. Dragon King, we have not let you down. We have brought the formation compass with us. The formation has been set up on the Free Planet. As long as we set up the compass, we will be able to teleport immediately. Ming Hua immediately took out a 100-meter-long compass and said to Wang Xian, "All right, let's go out." Wang Xian's body moved and he immediately flew out. He had already chosen the place where the formation was set up. Wang Xian asked Prime Minister Gue to inform Xiao Ran and the rest. The formation compass was set up at the seaside. When the time came, there would be members of the Dragon Palace guarding the place. Everyone could enter the Free Planet through the formation as long as they had sufficient spirit stones. Such a long-distance planet teleportation cost a terrifying amount of spirit stones. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Soon, a group of girls, Xiao Ranji Lingfei, Chen Feiyang, and a group of members of the Dragon Palace rushed over. The array formation leading to the nearest free planet is connected. Chen Feiyang looked over with excitement in his eyes. It's connected. Through the array formation, you can enter the free planet. Each free planet has hundreds of arrays leading to other planets. As long as you enter the free planet, you can basically enter most places in the boundless star field. Ming Hua, Yang Hua, and the rest looked at the many gods in the Dragon Palace and felt the majestic power. They were filled with fear and immediately replied. But the formation was set up in front and emitted a mysterious power. Dragon King, should we start implementing the plan? Prime Minister Gue looked at Wang Xian and asked slowly. Let's start. We've been waiting for a year. Wang Xian said slowly as he looked at Ao He and the rest. Then, Dragon King, I will go to the boundless sea. When the time comes, I will definitely conquer the boundless sea. Ao He smiled confidently as a strong sense of confidence emanated from his body. Currently, Ao He had 50 to 60 divine-level devouring dragons in his body. He alone could match a top-notch strength. Dragon King, there won't be any problems with our strange demon combat division. The black and white light on Ao Yao's body flickered. He was also full of confidence. Dragon King, our dragon guards are only suitable for training alone. There might be death, but if we can survive it, we will definitely be invincible. Ao Jian said coldly with an expressionless face. His entire person was like a sword. He was incomparably cold. If he could master the Heartless Sword principle, Ao Jian was confident that he could fight or even kill wild dragons and starwood dragons of the same level. All right, I believe in all of you. Wang Xian glanced at them and revealed a faint smile. A year ago, the Dragon Palace had already made preparations. The first task was to increase their own strength. With the resources that the Dragon Palace currently controlled, the only way to increase their strength quickly was through experience. Ao He led his subordinates into the largest ocean in the boundless galaxy, the Boundless Sea. Ao Yao and the rest were rebuilding the Dragon Assassin organization. As for the Dragon Guards, they were training their ruthless ways alone. The 3 great combat divisions of the Dragon Palace were all mobilized. There was a high possibility of heavy casualties if they were to go out this time. However, if they wanted to be strong, they had to pay a price. Furthermore, with the ancestral tree's soul returning wood, the casualties could be reduced to the minimum. Dragon King, wait for our good news. He and the rest walked straight to the middle-aged man in the formation and spoke to Wang Xian. He nodded his head faintly. His eyes were sparkling as he watched the few thousand subordinates of the Dragon Palace step into the formation. But the formation flickered and the group of members immediately disappeared. Dragon King, about that? I'm going back to my family. If you have any orders in the future, just let me know. I'll definitely bring my family's disciples over. At this moment, Chen Feiyang, who was at the side, said to Wang Xian. He had already recovered to the godly state. Now that the formation was activated, he naturally wanted to go home and show off. Okay. Wang Xian nodded at him. Mengxin. Chen Feiyang looked at Lu Mengxin, who was at the side. Lu Mengxin looked hesitant as she looked at her brother. Xiao Ran smiled at him and nodded. After a while, I will look for you guys. Yes, brother. We'll be back soon. Lu Mengxin said with a slightly red face. Don't worry, brother-in-law. I'll become the eternal God Lord soon. At that time, I'll take care of you guys. Chen Feiyang said shamelessly and brought Lu Mengxin into the formation. One by one, the figures left and entered the endless star area to fight. Chapter 2054. 2054. Xiao Xian, are you going out as well? As they watched the two combat divisions of the Dragon Palace and He leave, the group of girls looked at Wang Xian. We have to go out for a walk after all. Our place is still too small. Wang Xian's gaze swept across the group of girls. Even though they controlled 6 planets, it was still too small for the Dragon Palace. The resources were too scarce. If they wanted to improve quickly, they had to step onto the stage at the center of the boundless galaxy. Besides, those 2 girls have been urging me for a long time. I haven't gone to look for them. If I don't go now, the 2 girls will probably rush over. Wang Xian continued with a smile on his face. Are you going to the Eternal Divine Leaves first? The group of girls asked him. I'm going to the Eternal Divine Leaves first to understand the information of the boundless star field. The information of a god is very beneficial to the Dragon Palace. Wang Xian said to them. All right then. You can leave in peace. We will guard the house. The group of girls nodded and said. All right, there's no rush. I'll accompany you for a few more days. Wang Xian smiled and said, there are still some things that need to be dealt with. The departure of the Dragon Guards and the strange Demon War Department was just the beginning. The Firehammer clan was also going to enter the Free Planet to build a forging shop that belonged to the Dragon Palace. In the later stages, the Demon War Department might also look for some resources on the nearby planets. In the next few days, Wang Xian accompanied the group of girls and discussed some matters with Prime Minister Gui. 5 days later, Wang Xian brought Ming Hua and Yang Hua to the front of the formation and stepped into it. But the scene changed and the bustling sounds reached Wang Xian's ears. After he regained his sight, Wang Xian immediately looked at his surroundings. At least tens of millions of people were gathered in the surroundings. This place was like a huge altar. One by one, the runes of the formation stood at the bottom. Many people appeared in the formation. In the middle of the formation, there was a stone tablet that was 10,000 meters tall. There were a few words carved on the 4 sides of the stone tablet. War was prohibited on the Free Planet. Those who violated the rules would be killed. The words were filled with a cold aura. Looking at the entire formation, 90% of the people had the strength of a demigod or above. Even Wang Xian could see 20 to 30 gods who had ignited the divine fire. Among them, there were not only humans. There were also some creatures that had transformed into demonic beasts and possessed the characteristics of demonic beasts. There were also quite a number of giants that were more than 10 meters tall around them. There were all kinds of them. Everyone seemed to be used to them and were not too surprised. Dragon King, this is the array formation of the free planet. By placing supreme-grade spirit stones, one can enter any planet that is connected to any array formation. Now that the array formation is activated, others can also be teleported to Earth. However, under normal circumstances, no one will be teleported to an unfamiliar planet. They are afraid of encountering danger. Ming Huiyanghua and the rest explained to Wang Xian from the side. In addition, the free planet is a trading planet. Any fights are prohibited. Once it is discovered, there will be experts suppressing it. Every free planet is jointly maintained by the Boundless Starfield Trading Company and a god. Even the gods of the 9 wisps of divine fire would not dare to cause trouble here. A few thousand kilometers ahead is the trading market. In this market, even extremely precious divine artifacts can be bought. The gods of the hundreds of planets are basically trading here. The two of them continued to add. Wang Xian nodded his head faintly. Let's go and take a look. As he spoke, he flew towards the trading market. The entire free planet was 4 to 5 times the size of Earth. Although it was not considered to be very big among the other planets, it was still very huge for a trading market. Wang Xian, who was holding the dragon blood sword in his hand, was dressed in a brocade robe. He looked extraordinary. Even among the powerhouses from the other planets, he was one of a kind. It was not the first time Minghua and Yanghua came to this planet. They led Wang Xian as they walked ahead. Dragon King, this is the center of the market. There are more than a dozen top-tier trading firms nearby. These trading firms are very powerful. They are trading across at least a dozen planets and have all kinds of unique treasures. Over there is Eternal Thunderbolt Trading Firm. Eternal Thunderbolt Trading Firm is the largest trading firm in the northern region. After all, Eternal Thunderbolt controls more than 70 life planets. The two of them introduced to Wang Xian as they walked. How many gods are there in Eternal Thunderclap? Wang Xian scanned his surroundings and looked at the buildings that were 10,000 meters tall. He was slightly surprised. How many exactly? The two of them were slightly stunned and shook their heads. We are not sure either. However, there should be more than 1,000 of them. The two of them guessed. So many? Wang Xian was a little surprised. Dragon King, they are in control of 70 to 80 life planets in the northern region. These life planets are all rich in resources. It is easy for a planet to produce dozens of gods. In addition, there are some powerful space domains. We have guessed that there are less than 1,000 gods. It is even possible to produce 2,000 to 3,000 of them. The two whispered. The entire boundless star field was incomparably huge. Eternal Shocking Thunder, which occupied nearly 1/6 to 1/7 of the resources, was naturally extremely terrifying. No one dares to challenge the God Lord's majesty. In the end, the two added in a soft voice. Courting death. You actually dare to steal our Eternal Shocking Thunder Trading Company's treasures. You're courting death. However, just as the two finished speaking, a vast voice resounded throughout the entire planet. Minghua and Yanghua were slightly stunned as they looked at the sky in astonishment. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, terrifying figures flew out one after another. I don't care if you are Eternal Thunderclap or whatever. There's nothing I like that I can't steal. An extremely arrogant voice rang out, causing everyone on the free planet to be slightly stunned. Their faces revealed a look of shock. This is... Wang Xian was also stunned at this moment. It wasn't that he was surprised that someone dared to steal from the Eternal Thunderclap Trading Company. Instead, he sensed an extremely familiar aura. The Son of Heaven. His heart stirred as his eyes flickered. Another angle of view appeared in front of him. A short figure was staring at the void as he flew at a terrifying speed. In the sky above, meteors fell from the sky one after another. His figure sank into the meteors one by one and quickly shuttled through them. Go to hell! A furious roar sounded from behind him. Numerous attacks that were comparable to peak deity realm attacks attacked him. However, under the cover of those meteors, he did not suffer the slightest injury. Someone actually dared to steal something on the free planet. Furthermore, it was the treasure of the Eternal Thunderclap Trading Company. Who is so audacious? Stealing here hasn't happened in hundreds of thousands of years. Sounds of disbelief rang out from the surroundings. Wang Xian regained his senses and pursed his lips. His eyes were sparkling. The son of the true dragon, the son of the earth. Chapter 2055. 2055 Cosmic Energy Tide. Wang Xian didn't expect that the Earth-Sun Warrior would actually come to the boundless galaxy. Furthermore, he was audacious enough to steal the treasures of Eternal Shocking Thunder Trading Company. Just like the exclamations of the people around him, he was audacious enough. In the northern region, no one dared to offend Eternal Shocking Thunder, let alone steal the treasures of Eternal Shocking Thunder. Back when I ignited the divine fire on the Transcendence continent, the Earth-Sun Warrior and the demonic dragon Son of Heaven entered the vast void. I didn't expect to meet the Earth-Sun Warrior here. He has already ignited 7 wisps of divine fire. Furthermore, he is able to escape under the peak of the godly state. This fellow is quite strong. Wang Xian's eyes sparkled. At this moment, with a thought, he could wipe out the Earth-Sun Warrior's soul and take over this body. However, he did not do so. He watched quietly as the local Sun Warrior disappeared into the void. Behind him, a group of experts at the peak of the godly state chased after him. With a thought, an ant appeared in his palm. It was the treasure-seeking ant. But the moment the treasure-seeking ant appeared, his 6 tentacles emitted a white glow. Squeak, 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 squeak. A faint sound came out from his mouth. Wang Xian immediately sensed information one after another. Not only did that country bumpkin steal 1 item, he also stole dozens of them. Furthermore, all of them were at the divine level. The highest level was 8 wisps of divine fire. This fellow. The treasure-seeking ant clearly transmitted information of all the treasures within tens of thousands of kilometers to his mind. This made him extremely surprised. What surprised him even more was that this country bumpkin had stolen so many treasures and was so precious. No wonder the gods of Eternal Thunderclap were so furious. He escaped. Looks like Eternal Thunderclap is just SOSO. Wang Xian smiled faintly. Ming Hui Yanghua, who was at the side, opened his mouth slightly. His face was filled with disbelief. Someone had stolen the treasure from the Eternal Thunderclap Trading Company. You dare to say that our Eternal Thunderclap is only SOSO? At this moment, an extremely cold voice was heard. Wang Xian and Ming Huiyanghua were slightly stunned. They looked to the side. You dare to insult our Eternal Thunderclap? I think you are courting death. On the right, 5 young men stared at Wang Xian and the rest. Their eyes revealed a cold expression. No. How would we dare to insult Eternal Lightning? It's too late for us to suck up to them. Ming Huiyanghua was slightly shocked when he saw the clothes on their bodies. He quickly said. At the same time, traces of the gods' pressure overflowed from their bodies. Don't think that you can insult Eternal Lightning just because you have ignited the gods' fire. Do you believe that you won't be able to walk out of here today? The young man in the middle felt their divine might and shouted with a gloomy face without any fear. How can that be? How dare our little god insult the Eternal Thunderclap? Fighting is prohibited on the free planet. Young masters, will be leaving first. Ming He frowned slightly. He quickly pulled Wang Xian by the shoulder and walked towards the location of the teleportation formation. You don't know what's good for you. The 5 young men saw them leaving and raised their eyebrows slightly. They didn't bother about it anymore and snorted coldly. That damn guy dared to steal our Eternal Thunderbolt's treasure. I wonder if he was killed by Lord Lei Wen. With the majesty of our Eternal Thunderbolt, Lord Lei Wen will definitely be able to capture him. The few young men were conversing. Dragon King, you must not criticize them in the territory of eternal thunderclap. When Minghua and Yanghua saw that the 5 young men behind them did not chase after them, they heaved a sigh of relief and reminded Wang Xian. So powerful? Wang Xian raised his eyebrows faintly. We, as a small force, naturally cannot be enemies with eternal thunderclap, especially in their territory. Even if they are just a few demigod-level disciples, we should not offend them. Minghua said solemnly. He. Wang Xian chuckled and didn't say anything. A powerful force indeed possessed such prestige. Dragon King, where are you planning to go next? The 3 of them returned to the formation and Minghua asked him. To the eternal divine leaf. Do you know the teleportation route? Wang Xian looked at them. Eternal leaf of the east. The 2 of them were slightly stunned and looked at Wang Xian in astonishment. Yes, why? Wang Xian looked at them in puzzlement. Dragon King, among the 5 major forces, the Eternal Leaf and Eternal Thunderclap have always had a bad relationship. They are basically enemies and have not reached the teleportation formation in the eastern region directly. If we want to go there, we have to go through several planets for the transit. The 2 of them explained to Wang Xian. Is it an enemy force? Wang Xian was slightly surprised. So be it. Let's go. It's the Dragon King. The 2 of them nodded and immediately determined the route through the teleportation formation. But the formation trembled. Soon, everything in front of them changed. This area of the formation was obviously hundreds of times smaller than the free planet. The area covered by the formation was only 10 kilometers. Dragon King, over here. They came to the side and continued to use the array formation to make the transmissions. After 4 consecutive transmissions to the 4 planets, the consumption of spirit stones was extremely huge. Even Wang Xian frowned slightly. When the time comes, I'll let the 2 rich ladies help me out. He thought to himself and revealed a smile on his face. The transmission array leading to the thunderous sound continent has been shut down. However, just as they were about to make their final teleportation, a voice suddenly came from the side. What's going on? Why has the teleportation array suddenly been shut down? Minghua and Yanghua were slightly stunned, and they immediately asked the management staff next to the array. My lords, the energy tide at the boundary between the eastern and northern regions has once again erupted. Right now, Eternal Thunderclap and Eternal Divine Leaf are currently at war there. The array was shut down by Eternal Thunderclap experts, and we can't open it now. I heard that this energy tide is the largest in the past 100,000 years. There are over 1,000 gods gathered there. It is best that the 2 lords do not get involved in this mess. The Thunderclap Continent's managers sensed the might of the blazing sun flame and respectfully reminded them. Energy tide, is there a large-scale battle? The 2 of them frowned slightly. Their faces were filled with solemnity. What is the energy tide? Wang Xian asked in surprise. Dragon King, the universal energy tide is also a great fortune for the gods. Since ancient times, the universe created all living things. All living things are created by energy. The energy tide is the purest form of energy. If one can undergo a baptism in the energy tide, it can improve one's physique and increase one's strength. Besides, in the universe tide, there are universe true treasures and godly weapons. The friction and battle between eternal thunder and eternal godly leaf started there. Chapter 2056. 2056, listen to my orders. The so-called cosmic energy tide was a special Earth created for a special reason. There were black holes in the universe. The sizes of black holes varied. Some were the size of a palm, while others were hundreds of kilometers or thousands of kilometers in size. Some black holes moved all the time, while others remained stationary. The energy tide came from the black hole. A large amount of spiritual energy formed a tide because of the black hole. This energy tide carried various items and formed a tidal zone in the void. Because the tide was formed by the gathering of various kinds of spiritual energy, if someone entered the tide or cultivated at the edge of the tide, it would be dozens or even hundreds of times more than the outside world. The cosmic energy tide was not common, but there was one in the endless star field. It was also because of this energy tide that the dividing line between the eastern region and the northern region appeared. The boundary of this energy tide was about 10 million kilometers long. When the tide hadn't fully erupted, cultivating in this place was about 10 times more than cultivating in the outside world. If one could enter the center, it would be about 20 times more than cultivating in the outside world. And when the tide erupted, if one cultivated in the center, it would be more than 100 times more than cultivating in the center. In addition, in the energy tide, there would sometimes be weapons that were naturally formed by the impact of the energy washing. There were even divine weapons. Of course, there were all kinds of dangers accompanying the explosion in the tide. There were all kinds of meteorites, metal materials, and even some energy demon beasts mixed in the tide. If one accidentally bumped into these things, even a godly state expert might die. However, this could not stop countless people from going there to cultivate. Even the eternal divine leaf and eternal shocking thunder, the two major forces, had a fight over this, wanting to occupy this place. Dragon King, this formation has been shut down. Let's go back. Minghua and Yanghua said to Wang Xian timidly. As two of the more timid gods of divine fire, they wanted to retreat after hearing the words of the manager of the teleportation formation on the Thunderclap continent. Although their Dragon King's strength and faction were very strong, there were at most 100 godly state experts. There were more than 1,000 gods at the energy tide. Moreover, that was the battlefield of eternal thunderclap and eternal divine leaves. Although they were not cannon fodder, there was a high chance that they would die. If we fly from this planet, how long will it take to enter the eternal divine leaves? Wang Xian raised his eyebrows and asked the manager of the formation. Young master, if you want to fly over, I'm afraid it will take a month at the speed of a wisp of divine fire god. The array manager replied with slight astonishment. Do you have a detailed map of the starry sky in this area? Wang Xian asked him. Yes, we do. The array manager nodded. Dragon King, we don't want it. The energy tide of the universe. Such a precious place, of course we have to go and take a look. Moreover, I still have to go to the eternal divine leaf. Wang Xian looked at the two of them who were timid and said faintly. All right then. The two of them did not dare to resist and could only nod their heads in resignation. Let's go and take a look at the cosmic energy tide. Wang Xian took the starry sky chart and flew towards the void with great interest. It's the Dragon King. The two of them nodded and followed behind. After entering the void, Wang Xian took a look at the direction of the starry sky chart and teleported away with the fiery yang flame. Although Wang Xian's main purpose for coming out this time was to visit the two girls, he still needed to have a more detailed understanding of the entire boundless star field. Naturally, he had to take a look at this famous energy tidal land in the universe. If it was a treasure land, it could definitely allow a combat division of the Dragon Palace to come over and increase their strength in the future. Wang Xian's speed was comparable to a god with 8 wisps of divine fire. However, his endurance was definitely comparable to a god lord. The continuous movements did not consume much of his energy. We're almost there. In just 2 days, Wang Xian muttered as he looked at the markings on the starry sky map. Have the two of you been here before? Wang Xian asked Minghua and Yanghua. Dragon King, we have never been here before. This is a dangerous place. If we didn't have the eternal thunderclap or the eternal divine leaf, it would be very dangerous here. The two of them shook their heads. They had read a lot of books, so they knew a little about this place. However, this was his first time coming here. Crash. At this moment, a series of special sounds could be heard faintly from the front. Wang Xian's dragon eyes of yin yang and the 5 elements were glowing. He immediately looked towards the front. Hiss. When his gaze swept over, he revealed an extremely surprised expression. He couldn't help but take a deep breath. An energy tide with a width of at least a few hundred kilometers appeared in their line of sight. As for its length, Wang Xian couldn't see the end of it at a glance. The energy tide was located in the void. It was like a chaotic ocean with a thickness of a few hundred kilometers. Amidst the endless energy, there were all kinds of meteorites and other items. They were like trash and carried a terrifying impact force. With my yin-yang dragon eyes, I can only see a few dozen kilometers inside. This energy tide is too terrifying. Just the impact of this energy alone. If there is no god with the strength to enter the center, he would be instantly assimilated by the energy. Wang Xian's eyes revealed a look of shock. Huff, puff, puff. At this moment, the roar of flames could be heard from further ahead. His gaze swept over, and he was even more astonished. The energy tide wasn't just a spiritual energy tide. Sometimes, it would be a fire tide, a lust tide, a lightning tide, and all sorts of things. What a terrifying energy tide. This is more than 10 times more terrifying than what was recorded in the books. It is indeed the strongest energy tide in the past 100,000 years. Beside him, Minghua and Yanghua looked over in astonishment. This is the lower reaches of the energy tide. Let's go to the upper reaches and take a look. Wang Xian's eyes sparkled as he looked at the energy tide. Following the huge energy tide, he flew towards the upper reaches. The closer he got, the more astonished he was. Such a miraculous scene could only be seen in the boundless galaxy. Dragon King, there's someone up ahead. It seems like they are fighting. After flying for 4 hours, Minghua suddenly shouted at Wang Xian. I see them. Wang Xian's eyes were shining as he stared ahead. There, 5,000 to 6,000 people were fighting. Each of them was not weaker than a demigod. There were even 6 to 7 godly state experts among them. They should be the people from Eternal Divine Leaf and Eternal Thunderclap. Dragon King, it's best that we don't get involved. The two immediately added. He nodded lightly and was not prepared to get involved. But sometimes things often backfired. Chapter 2057. 2057. Listen to this young master's orders. Restrain those damned eternal divine leaves. In front of the vast energy tide, 4,000 to 5,000 people were engaged in a fierce battle. In the north of the energy tide, dozens of figures were floating in the sky. They held a long whip in their hands, and the whip extended into the energy tide. They held it with both hands, as if they were fighting for something. On the opposite side, there were also dozens of people fighting against it. Above the energy tide was a battlefield of thousands of people. From time to time, someone would fall into the energy tide and let out a miserable cry. In an instant, they were assimilated by the terrifying energy tide and disappeared. Damn it, these guys actually hid their strength. Young Master Yun, we are not their match. Let go of this treasure. In the sky above the energy tide, a God Realm expert shouted at the young man holding a long whip behind him. Ha, a bunch of trash from Eternal Shocking Thunder actually want to snatch our treasure. They're courting death. As soon as his voice fell, a young man on the opposite side shouted with a face full of ridicule. Bastard, this group of trash. The young man holding the long whip, dressed in purple clothing, and had the word Shocking Thunder written on his chest revealed an embarrassed expression. This is a divine weapon, a precious divine weapon. He growled in a low voice with a face full of unwillingness. Young Master Yun, someone is flying over from our left. At this moment, a middle-aged man standing beside young Master Yun said in a low voice. Oh, someone from our side? Young Master Yun looked over and saw 3 figures flying over. They should be flying over from our northern region. They might be here to get some benefits. The 3 of them dare to fly over. They should be at the god level. The middle-aged man analyzed the young man. The god level? Young Master Yun's eyes sparkled as he looked to the left. The three of you, come over and assist this young master. Listen to my orders and I'll bring you upstream. Thunderbolt order. Young Master Yun shouted loudly. With a wave of his arm, a token on his waist flew up into the sky. The purple token enlarged and the words Thunderbolt could be seen clearly within a few thousand kilometers. The people on the other side are from the northern region. Let's end this as soon as possible. On the other side, a group of young men and women saw three figures flying over from the other side. When they heard young Master Yun's voice, their expressions changed slightly as they shouted loudly. Ugh. At this moment, the three people flying over were Wang Xian and the other two. When they heard the voices coming from the front, they were slightly stunned. The Thunderbolt token. That is a direct disciple of Eternal Thunderbolt. Only direct disciples have the Thunderbolt token. When Minghua and Yanghua saw the huge token in the void, they were slightly shocked. What's the use of the Thunderbolt token? Wang Xian raised his eyebrows and looked forward. Dragon King, one of the Thunderbolt tokens, represents the status of a direct disciple of Eternal Thunderbolt. The other one holds the Thunderbolt token and can mobilize the subordinate forces of Eternal Thunderbolt. When the subordinate forces encounter the Thunderbolt token, they have no choice but to obey. The two of them said immediately, "Oh, it has nothing to do with us." Wang Xian swept his gaze over indifferently. There was not the slightest fluctuation on his face. Minghua and Yanghua's eyes flickered. They followed behind Wang Xian without saying a word. Go around. As Wang Xian spoke, he prepared to go around this area. Young Master Yun, that group of people ignored us. When Eternal Thunderclap and the rest saw Wang Xian and the rest flying to the side, their expressions changed slightly. Damn it, they actually dared to ignore us. Young Master Yun's expression changed slightly. At this moment, above the energy tide, a godly state expert spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated hurriedly. Oh no, young Master Yun, let's give up. Everyone looked over and said immediately, trash. Young Master Yun gritted his teeth. There was an intense look of unwillingness on his face. He waved his arm and withdrew the whip in his hand. Ah, the direct descendant disciple of Eternal Shocking Thunder is just a trash. On the opposite side, everyone laughed out loud. A carefree expression appeared on their faces as they mocked. Ka ka ka. Young Master Yun clenched his arm tightly. His expression was somewhat malevolent as he stared at the opposite side with eyes emitting flames. Young Master Yun. The battle above the energy tide had ended. 2,000 to 3,000 people flew behind young Master Yun. Their expressions were a little awkward. Stop those three people. I want to see what faction they are from in the northern region. How dare they disobey my orders? Young Master Yun heard the mockery from the other party. He looked at Wang Xian and the rest with a stern expression. Young Master Yun, those three people should be gods. Their strength is probably... A god with 2 wisps of divine fire looked over and said with slight hesitation. If I ask you to go, then go. What? Are you afraid that they will make a move? Young Master Yun shouted coldly. The people from the northern region naturally do not dare to make a move. We will go immediately. When the three gods saw young Master Yun's expression, they did not dare to disobey. Young Master Yun was currently in a fit of anger. It was the three of them who were unlucky. In the entire northern region, no one would dare to provoke Eternal Thunderclap. 2,000 to 3,000 people immediately flew towards Wang Xian and the rest. Young Master Yun followed behind them with a cold expression. What is that trash Lei Yun trying to do? Just now, he ordered the three people in the void to come over and help. The other party didn't bother with him. He might be trying to cause trouble for the other party. Interesting. They are all from the northern region. It's not a bad idea to let them fight each other. On the opposite side, Eternal Divine Leaf and the rest looked over with smiles on their faces. Not good, Dragon King. They are flying towards us. At this moment, Minghua and Yang Hua's expressions changed slightly when they saw young Master Yun and the rest flying towards them. Wang Xian naturally saw them as well. He gestured to them and stopped in the air. Which faction are you from in the northern region? Which planet are you from? A group of people flew over from the front. A god stared at Wang Xian and the rest and asked aggressively, "What's the matter?" Wang Xian glanced at them and asked faintly, "Didn't you hear my order just now?" Yun Shao walked slowly to the front and stared at Wang Xian with a sinister gaze. He raised his head slightly and questioned, "We are not your subordinates. Why should we listen to your orders?" Wang Xian felt amused and replied to him, "Do you know that in the northern region, no one dares to disobey our eternal thunderclap's orders?" Yun Shao narrowed his eyes slightly. His eyes were filled with killing intent. "So what if we disobey?" Wang Xian saw the killing intent in his eyes and narrowed his eyes as well. His gaze swept across the 2,000 to 3,000 people behind him. As soon as he finished his sentence, the three gods behind Yun Shao took a step forward with an embarrassed expression. A terrifying aura charged straight at him. "What do you think about the northern region?" Young Master Yun stared at Wang Xian with a sinister gaze. "Die? All right, I'll grant your wish." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.